for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Dolphin,
Yes.
Hay. Yes. Kinch,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stefas,
Yes.
Stevenson. Yes. Basting.
He's in the building. Okay, approval of minutes.
I move to approve.
Motion by Lisa to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Judy. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Communications, any board communications received? Nobody? Okay. Citizen communications?
There's nobody on the list.
Okay. Judy or Tracy? All right. John, we're just in the citizen communication part of the agenda?
Stop for me.
All right, okay. Administrative business services, credit card statement of activity. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Matt, do we have a second? Second by Lisa. Any discussion on the credit card? Hearing none, we will roll call, can't you?
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stevenson. Yes. Basting,
Yes.
Dolphin,
Yes.
Hay. Yes. Kinch,
Yes.
Stefas.
Yes. Approval of bills payable. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Jeff, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Larry. Any discussion?
It's the Airmac, is that 1,275 and almost 1,000, is that a monthly charge?
Do we bring bills payable? I believe it is monthly, Jeff, but I would want to say, check before I give you that confirmation. Do you know that it is monthly?
It seems really high, is there any way that you can kind of look into that, maybe see if there's a way of trimming that? Because that's mainly just for the rugs, and what else?
We've already eliminated uniforms in the past years out of that, so it'd be rugs, cleaning supplies, and custodial towels, mops, mop heads. I think those are the major things, but I can look to see what that inventory is.
I don't know, at that kind of price, you really might want to consider, because I used to use these folks years back, but I ended up buying all my own and do it, because after a couple of months, it was basically paid for.
Okay,
We did the same thing, we just bought a whole bunch.
thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, so we'll get phone.
Sure. Roll call vote, we're going around the table. Hay?
Yes.
Dolphin?
Yes.
Kinch?
Abstain.
Baskin?
Stand.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Stevenson?
Yes.
And Stefas?
Yes. Approval of budget and amendment. You want to explain what that's all about?
Yeah, this is a reclassification. Originally, when we had the stadium expenditure, which is again fundraised by the community for the community, it passes through a Fund 38, and it was in the budget all the way through our working documents in July and August. Somewhere throughout that process, it fell off of our budget worksheet, and the final budget that was approved did not have that expenditure in it. So if the board does nothing, that expenditure goes to Fund 10. If the board approves this amendment, it gets properly coded to Fund 38 where it was on our prior working copies, which is again, the stadium note that gets repaid through fundraising. So it's just reallocating the expenditure to the right location in Fund 38.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Matt, second by Jeff. Any other discussion? Should we do a roll call on that, vote too?
Commissioner Penn?
Okay. Angie?
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stevenson,
Yes.
Basting,
Yes.
Dolphin,
Yes.
Hay, Kinch,
Yes.
Stefas.
Yes. Personnel services. Approval of staff hires.
Yeah, Amanda Engel has requested an internal transfer to the pre-KEC instructional assistant position. The position is not benefit eligible, it's less than 30 hours per week. She's actually taking a pay reduction in order to make this move. She was part of our alternative benefit plan, and she is going to forego that in order to be able to take this change in position, and so I recommend approval.
What will the rate be now?
It'll be her current salary, no changes.
Otherwise, I said she's taking the cut pay.
Well, her alternative benefit plan, she would not be benefit eligible anymore, so the benefits would come off, it would be just salary only.
But, what time does school start for the, what time does the classes, what will be her beginning time in the morning?
We would be at 7.25 hours per day. We would work with a start time and end time. We don't have that really solidified. I don't know, Mr. Broglie, if you would suggest a certain specific start time. It's trying to cover bus duty on the beginning and the end of the day. We also have 2 buses picking up and dropping off in the midday shift. So we would try to flex the hours that we do have her to cover where we have the biggest need. And I don't know if you can go any further with that at this time.
Well, why do we need one in the morning when we only have a handful of students?
You want to speak to that, Mr. Broglie, or I can as well?
Just the consistency with the positioning in the morning, with the 4K programming with Mrs. Bush, as well as in the afternoon then. We actually, Mrs. Hubbard is working in our library, and she comes up and helps in one of the classrooms, so we actually have 2 instructional assistants along with the 2 teachers in the afternoons. So it's just nice to have that extra set of hands for the teacher with the students in the 4K programming. Does that help out, Mr. Kinch?
No, really, what I wanted to know, and it's like, 3 times as many in the afternoon class as there is in the morning?
It's because the EC has higher needs with the early childhood kids, right?
Yeah, the early childhood programming also has students that have already been identified with, IEPs and speech and language needs and things like that. There are still approximately 14 students in the 4K programming in the morning, and then approximately 14 per class in the afternoon. So we're still just trying to provide that instructional assistant for the 4K programming.
So the early childhood only goes a half a day?
Yep.
And currently there are.
So to expound upon that, I'm sorry. So Morgan has an early childhood class in the morning, and then in the afternoon, she would have one of the sections of 4K. And then Laura Bush would have a 4K section in the morning and a 4K section in the afternoon. So we have 3 sections of 4K and 1 section of early childhood. I'm sorry, Mary, go ahead.
How many kids are in the early childhood in Brad?
I think there's 4 or 5 in that programming right now.
So you've got 2 teachers and an assistant for like 14 kids?
There'd be closer to 18 or so in that morning group. There's more, I see what you're saying, but there's also some more exceptional educational needs with that group in the morning. Good question, absolutely.
I move that we approve this.
Motion by Lisa,
I'll second it.
second by Julie. Any other discussion? say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Glenn and Larry, or no's? Moving on to number 2.
We do then have a vacancy in Amanda's position as an instructional assistant. She was attached to 2 students, 1 student in the morning, different student in the afternoon. Both students are under an IEP that requires supports. And to fulfill that individual education plan, we recommend a hire of Katie Finley to that position. That would fulfill, I'm sorry, let me back up. There was an internal transfer that had a desire to fill Amanda Ingall's position. So Tammy, who's currently here at the middle school, high school position, would internally transfer to fill in Amanda's position. And so then we applied or interviewed for Tammy's position. And we would recommend that Kate Finley fulfill that vacancy, also in a need or a role where there's an individual education plan supported by a Fund 27, which is the special education fund, as a funding source for that position. This is a position that we, again, are mandated by our IEP to fulfill, and we recommend Kate Finley for that position. Kate's salary would be based on the entry-level step 1 of an instructional assistant. That's $11.92 per hour. Salary-wise and benefit-wise, it would range from a single to $25,046, or a family $34,642. So it'd be within those 2 ranges at that entry-level wage. And we would recommend approval of that position.
So you don't know if she's gonna be a single or a family?
No, we do not know that at this time.
She's accepted the job.
She's accepted the stipend at $11.92 per hour, correct, pending board approval.
How many students again?
That particular position is taking care of 1 student that has some significant medical needs.
Okay, what grade? I'm just curious.
I believe that's 8th grade.
Freshman.
Thank you.
I'll move to approve the position.
Motion by Julie, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Lisa. Further discussion? Any other options to look for this position? I know we told about pre-K position, roll it upside down.
Yeah, there really isn't in this particular case. The student requires an individual one-to-one environment in order to make sure that it's a safe environment for everyone. And there's really no option in this particular case.
Well, there's another lady gonna take Amanda's job, wasn't there?
Correct, yes.
This,
This is doing that final vacancy after all the shuffling is kind of taking place.
So with the 3 different positions that have been switched, pre-K, Amanda's original position, and this position, we still should be $20,000 ahead of where we were?
We would certainly be saving on the benefit position in the pre-K. Correct. You know, previously we were paying prorated benefits at the pre-K position. We'll no longer be paying any benefits at that position. The other 2 positions will still be salary, wages, benefits. So there's really no savings other than, yeah, really there's no savings there. We're just kind of transferring. I think the savings is all at the pre-K level.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
That's money you should roll. Talking some big dollars.
Jeff calls a roll call.
Okay.
So we will
Sorry.
do a roll call.
Stevenson? Yes. Basting?
Yes.
Dolphin?
yes.
Hay? Yes. Kinch?
Abstain.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Stefas?
Yes. Items for information. This Nexus.
It starts with our long-term facility planning meeting, and I'd like to welcome our guests from Nexus. We have Mike David and Jeff Mangan and Hans Knoll here. to share some information about a study that they conducted.
Here we go.
As you recall, the board approved a no-cost, long-term study plan to be conducted by Nexus. They're delivering their preliminary board plan tonight and are able to answer questions. At the end of this meeting, if the board wishes to continue to work with Nexus or any other vendor for that matter, we would ask for to receive a detailed long-term plan in the form of a request for proposal from vendors to include Nexus and others if we wanted to continue with the process. So hopefully I set that up, and welcome back to Mineral Point, and I'll let you take it from here.
Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Jeff Mangan. I'm the account executive with Nexus Solutions. To my left is Hans Knoll, project development engineer, and to my right is Mike David, one of the principals and founders of Nexus. And between the three of us, we're going to share with you the results of your preliminary analysis. And to do so, we're going to cover the following agenda. And we realize that some of this material is information we presented previously, but we realize that while we do this each and every day, we haven't been here in a few months, and we'd like to refresh you on some of the most important aspects of the nature of our work here. So with that, we're going to first talk about who we are at Nexus Solutions. Next, we're going to talk about the goals and objectives that are faced by all Wisconsin K-12 school districts, or most of them at least. The enabling legislation that makes these type of improvements in this program possible. Next, we'll talk about the detailed development process that ensures our mutual success. Then we'll dive into the preliminary analysis and share with you the results of our findings. And then we'll wrap things up talking a little bit further about Nexus services, and then reserve questions and answers for the end. But of course, stop us anywhere along the way if we can answer all of your questions. Okay, Nexus Solutions. We are first and foremost a professional services organization and an ESCO, or energy services company. And what that means is that we are qualified to work with you on this type of project. We're not a manufacturer, nor a distributor, nor an equipment service company. And that essentially means that we can be truly objective in our recommendations to you for a comprehensive and practical infrastructure improvement program, including associated funding strategies. We charge fees for service, and those services range from capital planning through consensus building, engineering, and commissioning. We possess an extensive knowledge of all things education in terms of finance, legal, and legislative matters. Our company founders have over 25 years of experience in working with K-12 organizations and have successfully developed over $1 billion of projects throughout the states of Wisconsin and Minnesota. Furthermore, we wrote Act 32 funding legislation that your district has utilized previously, and it may get in the future if you decide to do so. We're established, we have offices in Madison, Milwaukee, and Minneapolis. The typical goals and objectives faced by most school districts are as follows. First and foremost, you need to pay attention to safety and security and address any shortcomings in that area. And I understand that's on the agenda for later this evening. So that issue is paramount among schools, of course. But then you have other needs, whether they be boilers or chillers or roofs. Those things all need to be maintained adequately in order to provide an optimal learning environment for all students, not just some students. You've got challenges, added challenges in trying to keep utility and operating costs low. An option is not to take money from the classroom or from algebra to pay for building needs such as asphalt, and you're under an obligation to keep taxes low and reasonable. And in their quest to provide answers to these, or solutions to these issues, school districts will hire a firm like ours, or take it upon themselves to create a facilities plan. But a lot of facilities plans come up short in that they don't have a financial solution. And in our estimation, that means it's not an official plan, it's only a study. and studies end up in binders that set shelves and collect dust. So at Nexus, we pride ourselves in creating actionable plans that actually help you to get things done. Most school districts face unlimited needs and wants, but have limited means with which to pay for them. And so the Wisconsin legislature decided many years ago to implement at least their initial piece of legislation to help address this, energy savings performance contracting, and we know that you've utilized that here previously. And more recently, in 2009, they implemented the Revenue Limit Exemption Act. And I'll be talking for a moment about those, but we specialize in applying these two pieces of legislation in a fiscally responsible manner for all of our clients. As a reminder, Energy Savings Performance Contracting is a facility alteration or training program that reduces operating costs. Its goal is to improve the learning environment, and it's self-funding in that resulting savings from those improvements help to pay off a note, for example, to implement the improvements today, and then a firm will guarantee performance over the course of the next 10, 15, or 20 years. Coupled with the revenue limit exemption, these two pieces of legislation have enabled many school districts throughout the state to make significant improvements and provide a quality learning environment. It was originally enacted in 2009 and then revised in 2011. The initial version of the legislation came up a little bit short in that it only enabled school districts to implement small projects, and it really didn't allow them to create and fund a plan that would truly address maintenance needs over a long period of time to really get ahead of the facilities issues that are faced by virtually all school districts. So changes were made, significant changes in 2011. Most notable, the legislature enabled school districts to go and take out a long-term note to fund projects, again, implementing those projects today, and then paying off those notes over the next 15 to 20 years. Act 32, performance contract, or excuse me, the revenue limit exemption does require that this be coupled with energy savings performance contracting. What you see there is the 7-step process that we utilize to implement projects. It starts with the concept introduction, and then with your permission, that enabled us to conduct a preliminary building analysis, which is now complete. Next steps, as Luke mentioned, would be to conduct a qualified provider selection process, on the heels of which, once you select the firm with whom you'd like to work, you would enter into a project development agreement to then create, which would enable that firm to create the comprehensive analysis. Then you would enter into a stage where you take a look at specific recommendations that are made for improvements and the associated funding plan. And only when the board is comfortable with the plan, technically, financially, and politically, would you then approve it, after which we would implement those improvements and guarantee the results. And with that, I'll turn things over to Hans Knoll, who will talk about the preliminary analysis results.
So I had a chance to tour the buildings with Roger and Luke for a day, identify some items that were in need of upgrade. We break them into 4 categories here: savings opportunities, indoor air environmental quality, that's really air moving devices. Deferred maintenance is going to be roofs, asphalt, things that have zero or no energy impact, but they need to be upgraded. Obviously, doing nothing is an option, but it's typically not a good option. Technology and safety improvements, that's looking at fire alarm, cameras, and then obviously IT infrastructure and facility remodeling. It's just that. So I'll address all 5 of those. First one is the savings measures. Going through the building, school district still has a lot of the original interior and exterior lighting technologies in it. We're at an opportunity where we can improve to or upgrade to LED technologies. In some cases, we can de-lamp in order to meet the proper IES standards, lighting standards. IES is the Illumination Engineer Society. Lately, they've reduced the amount of light that needs to be, that's needed in most classrooms due to the use of computers, iPads, to reduce the amount of eye strain on students and staff. Certainly in areas where there's offices, chemistry labs, physics labs, we would keep the levels a little bit higher, but we found through a lot of studies that there's just too much lighting in many school districts, and that's the case here. Opportunity for energy, high efficiency motor replacements, including variable speed drives, since allowing us to modulate those pumps and fans to meet the actual needs. Certainly, both schools' boilers are in need of review for some higher efficiency equipment. Kitchen equipment here particularly is original, so it's going on 20-plus years old, and there's certainly more efficient equipment that can be installed while increasing the productivity of the staff there. And as always, enhanced digital controls. This is the building automation system behind the heating and ventilation that can be upgraded. With that, looking at utility bills, we identified about $25,000 worth of energy that we can save. A large part of that's going to be in the lighting, but certainly some from efficient heating and cooling and digital controls we talked about. When you look, this is a pie chart of what schools typically spend on their facilities, and what I've just addressed is the small piece of pie in the purple area. Obviously, there's going to be an amount of energy that's always required to run the school. We also want to focus on the two large users, and that's major equipment failures, trying to either be proactive or replace failures. And then also, obviously, what goes along with that is the cost of replacement. So we want an opportunity and comprehensive to go through and see where you're spending money. For instance, if you're spending, $6,000 on roofs every year, if we're replacing that roof, we can realize those savings. Those are true savings that will go to the school and go to paying for that new roof. If you're spending $2,000 annually on boilers that are 20 years old, replace it. Ideally, those boilers are going to have a 20-year, 20 or 40-year life cycle, depending on which ones are selected. So we can realize that $2,000. So that's a pretty simple way to see how we can save $25,000 in utility, but operationally, there's some opportunities. Again, we haven't gotten into that detail, but a school district this size, we typically see about $26,000. So $51,000 annually, well, that's not a ton of money, but if you look at it over 20 years, that's more than $1 million worth of work that can be done by reducing payments to your utility vendors, to your outside vendors, making repairs and upgrades. So you can see how we initially make these plans tax beneficial.
So why improve facilities? In schools when we were kids were fine, so are they good enough today? What many people don't know is that facilities rate very highly as a factor in determining student performance, right behind involved parents and inspiring teachers. So improved facilities really do make a difference, and up to 50% higher on standardized tests. And that should make sense to all of us because we all work in environments where you want ideal facilities, temperature conditions, lighting, etc. So we would maintain that these are worthwhile investments.
So as we look into some of the other items that aren't as energy heavy or intense, we focus more on deferred maintenance and occupancy comfort. Starting with the indoor environmental quality, there's opportunities potentially for variable volume fan conversions. That's an area where we can get more zone control in some areas for improved comfort. Increasing fresh air levels in classrooms, we want to review the existing percentages and ensure that we're meeting ASHRAE standards. Replace age ventilation systems, and similarly on the heating and cooling water systems if there's opportunity for increase for efficiency and indoor quality. Deferred maintenance items, I mentioned this before, there's opportunity for roofing replacements, particularly here at the high school. There's some gutter upgrades that are needed. Domestic water systems are aging and in need of some replacement. At the elementary school, there's some older heating water piping that's I wouldn't say on the verge of failure, but could have a catastrophic failure at any time. And then, of course, again, at the elementary school, reviewing the electrical distribution system, which is an important infrastructure piece that doesn't get addressed a lot. Window replacements at the elementary school, there's some single pane windows right now. I'd like to consider a project like this. Masonry beams are always important to look at. It's over to overlook these, but if you find areas where water can infiltrate in, that's a place where it can freeze thaw, starts breaking bricks and blocks, breaking out mortar, and then that problem just exacerbates. So that's an important one, easily overlooked, but important item to stay on top of. Indoor interior and exterior door replacements, parking lot resurfacing, and then there's some excessive wear on carpets, particularly at the high school, that are probably in need of replacement. Technology, we can look at generators for backup purposes. I didn't have a whole lot of chance to get into your IT infrastructure, but I do know that the security camera system is dated, along with the card access and the clock system, so that's something we'd like to look at, the opportunity to address the IT system more. There's an opportunity to include that in these types of projects. Lastly is the facility remodel. As we looked around, certainly the secure entrance at both schools is a need. This is providing a vestibule area where we can control visitors throughout the day, and they can be badged properly. Traffic circulation upgrade at the elementary school is in need. Now that's traffic circulation outside as far as the parent drop off and the bus drop off. So that's something I'd like the opportunity to expand on further. Third bullet there is 21st century library and classroom areas. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. I'm going to address that in a couple extra slides, but that's something that we've been really looking into a lot of schools like yourself, 20 to plus year age. And then the elementary feasibility assessment. When we look at the needs throughout the district, obviously focusing on the elementary school, this plan would allow us to really get a good feel of how much investment that school needs. Allow us to take a step back and do some talking and look at whether it's important to make that next step, analyze what a new school would cost versus what the existing school needs to have to bring it up to new school standards. So this is kind of the first step into looking into that a new elementary feasibility. Looking at the 21st century learning areas, this is something that a lot of schools are doing. This isn't something that's being just done in metropolitan areas. When we remodel libraries and classrooms for that matter, libraries now are not areas with books on bookshelves all over. They're turning into areas where there's minimal books on the shelves. A lot of that stuff is going to virtual, going to iPads and tablets. And libraries are going from, they call it the shush space to the talk space, right? They want to encourage collaborations, both in large group and small groups. So as you look at this picture, it's all about movable furniture. You've got comfortable, movable furniture in the green areas. You've got some individual zones for groups of 3 to talk and collaborate. You've got some, over to the right where they can use the whiteboard and act as a group of 6 to 6+. You still provide out breakout spaces on the upper left side for small groups and on the upper right side for large groups where you can have conference-style discussions. Again, that's flexible furniture, so that it could go into your typical classroom style with rows, but typically it's set up more like a boardroom style. What you get is a collegiate feel, and that's not by accident. It's trying to start replicating that collegiate feel and collaboration for as students move on. This is a lot the same. This is a classroom. Again, not every classroom is like this, but dedicated rooms, they call them discovery rooms is the buzz term. Again, you can see a lot of movable furniture and areas for small group collaboration within the school. I've got a couple pictures of what some of these look like in other schools. This is again a high school library. IMC is a media center. Is what they're going from IMCs to media centers. You can see, again, comfortable seating, a lot of whiteboards. You can see a small group space there in the middle for collaboration. This is a middle school. Again, I'll keep repeating it, comfortable furniture, movable furniture for individual studying and then collaboration. Here's an elementary school. They've got this maker space. What this is just a creative thinking area where students can go. There's a pegboard on the back for doing some specialized projects. They've got, again, creative colors, creative tables for putting up erector sets, a lot of Lego projects, and just making an area where kids can start thinking outside of the box. So that's just to give you a flavor for what 21st century living is and learning is, and what we'd like to consider in some of particularly the library areas here.
All right, so you have needs, but why not? Consider the following, that interest rates continue to stay at historic lows, and that's something to consider taking advantage of. Construction inflation has averaged 5% per year since 1969, and in recent years we see that rate going up even a little bit more, especially with HVAC equipment. So if you can borrow at 3% today versus wait at 5%, that's something to take a look at. Property valuations have normalized and are starting to rise depending upon people's locations. Contractor costs are favorable, but we're starting to see them increase, and the state has given you the legislative tools to make improvements to the buildings, and you should utilize these tools while they're available. We dug into a little bit of your tax situation here and wanted to illustrate the local levy per student on a normalized basis. And I live in Sun Prairie, and I'm convinced we've got some of the highest taxes around. And that may or may not be true, because I've never compared Sun Prairie to our neighboring districts. But in your case, you may feel the same way, but if you take a look at how you stack up to other districts in this vicinity, you're a little bit below average, which is food for thought in terms of your tax rates and what means you have available to fund projects.
What's wrong with having your tax rate be a little more favorable than the other people in your area?
It's nothing, it's short answer. What's interesting is that our experience has been, obviously, you don't really want to be on the far right side of this table. But what's interesting is we found the general public doesn't want to be on the far left side either. What we're saying is you're in a good position.
Okay, so the timeline that we followed and one that we'd like for you to consider following is what you see here. We conducted the preliminary analysis and are presenting that to you tonight. If the board decides to move forward, we recommend that you conduct a qualified provider selection. That could be accomplished in January. We believe we're the best at what we do, but stack us up to our competitors and see for yourselves. Assuming that we are selected, the board would approve a project development agreement, which can be done in February. And again, these are just approximations. It's not a fixed timeline by any means. We would then return to the district with a comprehensive analysis showing you costs and savings and putting together the plan in a very comprehensive manner, and I'll be talking about that more in a moment. We would be in a position to present that in spring. Provide you, the administration and the board, with executive consultation until, like I said previously, the point where you feel extremely comfortable with the plan. Again, that would take us through summer of 2016, and the board could approve a plan in winter of 2016, design and implement the system. We would do that in spring of 2017. And again, just some rough timelines for you here. In terms of how we relate to your district, Nexus serves as program manager. We work cooperatively with your financial advisor, which is PMA, to develop the funding and financing strategies that make sense. We handle engineering and commissioning in-house. If an architect is needed, they become a member of the team. And we serve as construction manager as well, taking all design specifications, issuing them out to bid, sharing those bid results with you in the interest of identifying the best qualified subcontractor for a particular purpose. It's interesting, we had a company meeting last week, and we had a couple of clients come in and talk to our team about their experience with Nexus. And one of the customers said that no other firm in the industry, in his opinion, and he's been in the construction industry for a long, long time, provided the front-to-back services or comprehensiveness that Nexus does. And that's illustrated here. Front-to-back services and beyond, where we ensure that we implement projects that meet your satisfaction at the most economical means possible. The next step, as we mentioned multiple times, would be for the district to commence with a qualified provider selection. And if we're selected, we will complete the comprehensive facility analysis. We'll develop an itemized list of improvements, identifying funding sources, tax impacts, and financing options. Our job is to find sufficient net savings to cover all development costs and ensure that the program satisfies all legal requirements. The development costs would be funded by the project savings, and if the district decides not to pursue the plan, we would simply be billed a walkaway fee, and that walkaway fee wouldn't come close to our actual development costs. But in essence, you know, we talk with a lot of districts, and if we were to offer this service for free, we'd be overwhelmed with free services. And so we provide a walkaway fee just so you guys have some skin in the game.
What is the walkaway fee?
5 cents per square foot. So we guesstimate about $10,000 to $12,000. Comprehensive analysis includes a project selection sheet, which you see illustrated here. I won't go into detail on this at this point in time, but we list all itemized improvements, when we would suggest that they be implemented, the associated savings for each of those measures, and then the total cost of improvements. That one column you see there, cost of improvements, is essentially a budget. And in essence, we commit to you that we're not going to exceed that budget amount, and if we do, we'll redesign that particular improvement at our expense to make sure that it's within budget. If it's under budget, the school district keeps the differential. That selection worksheet is in turn tied to a funding plan where we show you in detail how we fund and finance the plan along with the associated tax impact. Key takeaways we'd like to suggest is that the state has empowered Mineral Point Unified School District to embark on this type of project to address your needs. Bond referenda are not required to make these improvements. You've got great financing rates which won't last forever, and our program would enable you along with our assistance to create a comprehensive plan for reinvestment that's budget neutral, tax sensitive, and provides minimal risk because we guarantee the results. And so the next step would be a comprehensive audit. Are there any questions?
So there was a time a while back when Johnson Controls came through and did a comprehensive analysis of our facilities, and they gave us some recommendations on things that we needed to improve and upgrade. And I know we haven't covered all of those. I'm assuming we still have that comprehensive analysis as a cost-saving measure for our district. Is there a way for you guys to take what's already been done and implement some of those changes and see those through versus us having to pay for another comprehensive analysis that we've already paid for once?
It would, if you still have information, it would certainly serve as somewhat of a roadmap. A lot of the information would need to be updated, either just because costing is outdated or technology has changed. You know, for instance, if it was done 3 years ago, if it looked at like, for instance, it would have been looking at probably 25 watt T8s. Today, you go to all LED lighting just because that technology has advanced so much. So it would certainly save time. But, yeah, you would want to make sure that it's updated with current strategies, technology, and budgets. But I mean, it would certainly could be utilized.
Utilized, but not really any type of cost savings to us. That's my first thing.
Well, the less time that we spend, the less money that you spend, so yes. Okay, yes. That helps. Yeah.
Didn't you guys, weren't you with Johnson Controls?
Yeah.
I mean, you did that for,
Coincidentally or ironically, we were with Johnson Controls and did it, and I can assure you that the technology's changed, the costing has changed sufficiently. Also, Johnson Controls, you know, we did a review of your HVAC system, focusing on energy savings, but our comprehensive analysis is so much, I wouldn't say broader, but more detailed. We look at some other items that, again, are gonna address deferred maintenance items and give you a real facility upgrade plan, not just focus on the HVAC and the controls system, because that's just a small part. And you guys will be, at the end of our comprehensive analysis, you guys would have much more knowledge and be able to make decisions with that informed knowledge and a better, better guys.
What I was just saying there is, you know, Johnson, and I spent 20 years at JCI also, they tended to focus more on mechanical systems primarily, okay? And we focus on all of the capital needs of the school district. So, and the reason being is we learned through the years that when a school board is making decisions on where to invest capital dollars, well, mechanical is part of it, but you want to be able to see the whole picture to make an informed decision on, you know, where should our highest priorities be. So we show you the complete picture of here's all of the needs over the next 5 to 10 years, and then we'll show you a financial plan as well, but you can make a much better decision in terms of where should we invest and where should we hold back. So it's, again, we would certainly utilize any existing work. I mean, there's no reason to reinvent something. But we're suggesting to you to take a broader look and a complete picture of what the district's needs are going forward.
are we able to take surplus money and put it into Fund 32?
Yes, and your surplus is slided into Fund 32 for purposes of energy performance contracting, yes. And remember that the part of this project, or this analysis, started with our creation of a Fund 46 to look at long-range planning for capital dollars that we have already put away and started that process that we can't touch those dollars for 5 years. But the idea is not to just look at energy efficiency projects alone or long-term capital needs like parking lots and building envelopes and so forth, but to try to look at those two almost as a crosswalk to look at how can we do savings and do long-term planning for not only Fund 46, but for our facilities and beyond. So trying to truly put together a 10-year plan for our facilities that takes all of these pieces in conjunction with one another, I think is part of the reason Nexus is at the table today, because they go beyond just the energy efficiency part.
So what kind of dollars are we looking at for a long-term plan?
We don't-
1.8 million, wasn't it?
No,
One quarter.
those numbers were just samples, but
That's what I added it up to.
what we do is, we look at all your systems and subsystems throughout the buildings, and bring it back, both in spreadsheet format, also in a detailed write-up. If you look at this table on the far left-hand column, some of the rows are Xed and some are not. Those that are Xed are included, those that aren't are not included, okay? So we allow you to pick and choose and build your own project. So it isn't, we really can't tell you it's gonna be this much, we would of course make
I wasn't
recommendations.
referring to the cost of the project itself. I was
Oh.
talking about what you guys charge us to get to that point.
Oh, well, what we do is to get to this point, we just charge it on a time and expense basis, okay? And if the district, again, if the district elects to do nothing, okay, we would provide you with a walkaway fee, which we says, roughly a nickel a square foot. Otherwise, the cost is rolled into the project. We show you what it is, it'd be a line item, okay, in the project. And then the only other area where we make one, I was gonna ask is, we provide professional services, so there's engineering services or construction management. We don't self-perform any of the work, but to prepare the plans and specifications, we bid out the work and then manage the contractors and provide those services.
Is there a line up there for that?
No, we gladly show it, but it's in the third column over from the right, you see total cost of improvements.
Okay.
That is the project budget. And what I mean by project budget is that includes both the hard costs and the soft costs, so the trade contractor budget, as well as costs for the soft costs of professional services, fees, permits, things of that nature. But we would, if you would like to see a breakdown on any particular item, we'll show you a complete breakdown.
So it's already in those figures?
It is, yes, correct.
My assumption is you're a little vague about what it costs to take that first step in this journey, because if there were other vendors that would be bidding on the same proposal to do the same work, they would know your number and could easily undercut that. Is that kind of the?
Well, ironically, they couldn't undercut it if they're playing straight up. Which is one of the reasons why Jeff says, we obviously feel we're the best, but we want the district to stack us up against the competition. What other clients, other school district clients who have done a thorough comparison have said, we don't know how you do it because your experience is broader, your expertise is deeper, and your fees are nearly half. But the reason being, most firms, we will provide like engineering services, things like that it takes to design the projects. We do all that in-house. The other firms have to outsource that because they're Johnson Controls, they're Honeywell, Siemens, they're equipment suppliers. So then they outsource the engineering, it becomes a cost to them. For us, it's something we do in-house, so as a result, it's much less expensive. But again, it's when it comes to, and every different line item is different from a standpoint of, you can understand that it would take a lot more expertise and effort to design a new mechanical system for an existing building as it would be to design a parking lot, just for instance, so that the fees are put commensurate for each individual line. But again, we're 100% transparent on that. When we're working through the project, we would literally show you what we have got built in there. And then, as Hans mentioned, once we put the project budget together, once we have the project that meets your needs, technically, financially, politically, because those are all real aspects of any public project, we then go through design the entire project, we bid it out, we show you all the bids, and in fact, we'll work with you on which contractors you want us to award to. And then we'll award those contractors, assuming that the contractors are under budget. The difference goes back to the school district. If they're over budget, we redesign the project at our expense to get back.
I'm assuming that some of the payback on this has got to be the savings if we borrowed and then got tax credits, because frankly, 65,000 total savings on a $1.8 million project is pretty small.
Well, and keep in mind that some of this isn't done, some of this isn't, a lot of this work isn't done purely from a savings perspective. If you look at that first line item, okay, the base ventilation project is $972,000, and the operations and maintenance savings is $5,000 a year.
Right.
Well, the idea there is, this is just a sample project. It's a real project. I don't know which one it is, but it's a real example. But anyways, the idea is that you wouldn't be replacing the mechanical system just to save money. You're replacing it because it probably doesn't meet code. Code with.
What I'm saying is, if we had a project of $1.8 million and we borrow that amount, we roughly get 30-35% credit back from the state or feds for our reimbursement, right?
From an aid perspective.
Right,
Yes.
because if this was our project, I'd like to know I want to know what our actual payback, how long it would take for that payback.
Long time.
We would show you exactly how it's laid out. No one's going to fully understand this, but we lay out a detailed financial plan which shows you exactly how it's paid for, what the hard dollar savings would be to the school district in terms of budget reducing savings, what you would utilize.
But is that up there in this particular, is that what we're looking at now?
Yeah, exactly. So this is the financial plan of how the two sheets.
So it's roughly 20 years.
It's gonna take you about 28 or 9 years to pay it back with the savings, without interest.
But you're gonna get some money back because of borrowing or spending that money.
Exactly. Some of it is going to be, you'll have access, you'll have additional state aid, so the state's going to be a part of that. If you utilize the Act 32 funding, you'd have additional revenue limit authority to cover that part of the expense. In this project, you've got hard dollar savings.
And Act 32 is the money that we can assess higher above our limit because of, okay.
Yes, sir. And that is shown under the blue heading of the table at the bottom where it says planned funding. The left-hand column under the blue heading where you see revenue limit exemption, that's the amount of this particular plan that qualified there. This big plan didn't receive any additional state aid. You see the utility operational savings. Okay, so we're showing.
Why wouldn't they have gotten stated, even if it's hypothetical?
Yeah. If it's, not all the time, obviously, it's not in every district, not additional expenses gets additional aid. Because remember, we're talking here, it is above it. In this case, the 166,000 is above the cap. Well, they maybe didn't receive any additional aid on that, any additional tertiary aid.
Okay, but I guess I'm not asking my question right, because it's like, if we hypothetically have a $1.8 billion project, I want to know how many years before it's paid back. Because with state aid and everything, it's like, are we talking 5 years or are we talking 15? Because that's a big difference.
Right. Well, if you're in a situation, and here I believe you are, where you get additional tertiary aid, okay, we would show that down and factor into that column. That's the second column from the left under planned funding. So we would factor that in.
You wouldn't really be able to answer his question until we decide which project to bring into place. Right?
That's exactly it.
I realize that, but
But-
I'm just saying, hypothetically, if we had said we're going to spend $1.8 million on X, Y, Z, I want to know what the payback's going to be. I want
28 and a half years without interest. What's the interest rate going to be?
If you finance it over 20 years, right now, it'd be about 2.8%.
28, 20?
We can do that simple calculation if that's something that needs. Again, it depends on if you're selecting energy intensive upgrades or non-energy intensive upgrades, and upgrades that potentially have operations maintenance savings. And again, like I said, we want to look at how the state aid truly affects you guys.
Like, for instance, if you were to put a new roof on a building, okay, in hard dollar savings, it's never going to pay for itself. Okay, maybe in 200 years. But realistically, when people tell you, well, not that I've been in business a long time, it will not pay for itself. Do you have to do it? Yes. Okay, so the savings there would be, if you don't do it, what's the secondary damage to the building? Because that's the real cost. And there's plenty of school districts who said, oh, we're going to do another year, less than another year, we're not going to do it. The roof leaks, they have mold problems. You're going to hear more and more about it because they're happening out there. Those are the types of things that come up. We do calculate little softer savings as well. But you can't pay the bills here. No. You would on the capital expense, but the state aid is going to be on how do your expenses compare year over year. So it's not going to look at it, say.
But if our roof was $1 million, the next year we would get roughly 35% of that back.
You wouldn't pay the $1 million in a single year, well, you could, but I don't think you'd be in a position to do that. What you would do is finance it over a period of time. So you usually get the aid on the annual payments on the financing.
Right. But you're still going to get that 35% on it
Yes.
if it was $1 million project over the long term.
Yes, and yes. You
That's
would.
what I was getting at.
Okay, oh, I'm sorry, and we would show you these two sheets, and unfortunately, these are sheets from different projects, so the numbers don't dial. Okay, but as you pick and choose and add or delete projects on this sheet, we automatically update your financial performance, so you can get all the answers to your questions. This is a tool that Jeff mentioned. We had a client, we had an all-company meeting last week, and we brought in a couple clients just to talk about what's their perspective on Nexus. And one of our clients has been in the business been in the school business 40 years.
what I would like to see is a list of Mineral Point School District projects, the low hanging fruit, which would be have the highest payback. Just bring that to us. They don't have to be in a form where it's approved by the state and whatever. But then we can look at it and say, well, maybe this makes sense. We'll save $50,000 a year, and we're going to spend $500,000. It's going to take us 11 years to do it. That what would make sense to me.
And that's exactly what this is. I mean, again.
Is this our list?
No.
No, but,
No,
okay.
what I'm saying, but to do what you're talking, that takes serious effort. And, I mean, that
But to
takes.
sell yourself, maybe you gotta put an extra few inches into this thing. I don't know, but,
We have tens of thousands into that. I mean,
just to come up with a ballpark figure of what we're looking at. I mean, two new boiler systems and what they would cost on an annual basis. Utility saving, that's what I'm looking for.
Right, to make it real, that takes serious time. I mean, to look at, and the other thing I guess you maybe need to think about is if you just want to look at things just purely from a savings perspective, not taking into consideration what it costs to not address deferred maintenance. And that's certainly a way to do it. That's one that takes a whole lot less time, okay, because we're not looking at near as much stuff, but as a board, you don't have a complete picture to identify where you should invest and where you shouldn't. None of these things are going to have, super attractive hard dollar paybacks. I mean, the utility costs in the school, the total utility budget for a school district is 3 or 4% of the total budget. If you can save 20% of that, that's 0.6%. I mean, it's not a huge number. The operation, where the cost, the reason that the state moved forward with Act 32 is, the real issue is, as a state, we have $4.5 billion in deferred maintenance that was growing at 7% a year, so $300 million a year was getting lumped on the backs of Wisconsin taxpayers because we were doing nothing. Okay, no one knew it, but that number just kept growing and growing and growing. And the state said, we've got to do something about this. That's the real cost to a community, is by letting our infrastructure keep aging and not addressing. No, your schools aren't.
It is a risk.
Yeah, and your schools are not in terrible shape here. I mean, the community's made some investments, but there are certainly needs, and the big question that I believe they're going to be faced with is what to do with the elementary school, to reinvest in it, or I've heard talks that does it get replaced. And I honestly don't know an answer right now. That's one of the things we look at is, what does make sense. But I mean, that is kind of the real issue is, again, are you looking to put together a long-range facilities plan, knowing here's going to be the burden. And we were talking with Luke earlier, and he was saying that the board is looking at a declining budget and possibly going into a deficit potentially, and knowing how facilities are going to impact that over the long haul. That's what our plan sort of does for our clients. If it's, I don't know if that's a fit here or not, but that's what we do.
So if we hire you guys for this long-term facility plan, and you do all the work, X, Y, Z, and so forth, do you bill us along the way? Or do you do all that work, and then they walk in, and we take a look at it, and we say, okay, let's pay them $12,000 and walk away?
Great question. Yep, that's a great question. The deal is, because we recognize up front, we don't know, what does it look like? What do we need to do or not do? And quite frankly, we don't know either. We can kind of guess just from being in the business, but really knowing, no. So that's why we say we will put together an agreement which, we're reaching 2/3 of the way across, saying, we're not specifying what the project is, okay? We aren't going to specify required that you do 50% of the line items or 90%. Okay, you have full control over that. And allow you to pick and choose your own project we earn our fees, if you will, on the project that the district ultimately selects. But then the kicker is, what we are gonna say is, and in the event that we bring it back and the district says, you know what, this doesn't look great, feel right, whatever it might be, and we're gonna have tons of discussions along the way, so that's not gonna be something that's gonna come out in the end, okay? But in the event that you do, we provide you with a walkaway for you, saying, okay, this is roughly a third, a quarter of our cost, because you've got your study, you know, the state of the state. But what we would ask is, we don't want you taking our plan and implementing with somebody else, okay?
Totally understand.
Okay, but in terms of what it is, again, we make our money, again, that's what I'm going to ask, on the projects that you decide to include into the overall project, if that makes sense. So that, and some districts do that. The vast majority say, we just want to do it and get it done. Some say, we want to break it into a multi-year plan. Either way is fine, there's pros and cons. We can walk you through that. So the thing, keep in mind that the next step, if the district decided to pursue this, would be to go through a qualified provider selection process. It's pretty standard in the industry to go through requests for qualifications and kind of find out who else is out there.
In short, you have to be a recognized ESCO in order to do this type of energy efficiency work, and not every company is qualified to do this work and be performance contract eligible through the DPI and others. So there's a limited pool that will work in the southwestern part of the state, and it costs us nothing to get proposals, but at that point, then the board would have more information about what each vendor would charge us to do a detailed analysis of a comprehensive facility plan. And then we could decide thumbs up or down if we wanted to proceed, given their proposals. So look for a direction from the board, or we can bring this back on the next agenda if you need some time to consider.
Any comments?
No, I don't know. I don't think I have sufficient time to look anything over by January. You got Christmas and whatever. That would be a sufficient time to go over it or not.
Anybody else? We'll bring this back in a couple of months with, to go out for bids on this kind of thing. I agree with you, you're gonna have, you guys know the business. One other company maybe?
No, well, again, this, I mean, not that far, almost. I think you'd end up, I mean, there's roughly a half a dozen companies in the industry in the state of Wisconsin, and there's a dozen legitimate ones, probably half a dozen. That, I mean, and you're a large enough community, I think you garner some interest.
I think it makes sense to look at some of the other providers. And we know we have some things that need to be addressed, like the river, elementary school. And, you know, maybe it does make sense to lump some of the other things in and, you know, pay for it in a way that has the lowest impact on taxpayers. I don't see the harm in exploring this further.
We have a building and grounds committee.
We do have an operations committee. Member Basting is the chair and Member Dolphin is the co-chair.
We do have projects identified on our list, including rain gutters, partial replacement of roof on this building roof. The boilers, that's been hanging around forever since I've been on the board.
Well, what is the average life of the boiler? You mentioned 20 to 40 years?
It depends on the boiler.
Well, I-
15, 20, but it could be
I
40.
understand that. I tried to do many different things. know exactly when they had to be, when life was up. Some things it's impossible to know when it's needs to be replaced until it fails.
The one at the elementary school is, what, 50-something years old, and it's well past the life expectancy of a boiler.
I can speak to, I believe, $10,000 to $12,000 that we put into boiler maintenance just at the elementary to keep it operational for last year. Which when you talk about the deferred maintenance, you have the energy efficiency of a new boiler, but also the savings of continuing to fix and patch up an aging one. So that kind of speaks to what you're talking to, or that's what resonates with me when I hear that. So certainly we know there's some low-hanging fruit, and you know, there is some other things that we know we've stopped to maintenance on our elementary parking lot. We know that that's a replacement. There is certainly no energy efficiency involved with replacing a parking lot. However, taking in context a replacement of a boiler and those savings to help potentially partially pay for a parking lot might make sense to the board if we could put it together in a comprehensive way where we're again, crosswalking all of these needs that are energy efficiency and not.
Well, if you spent $10,000 or $12,000 on how much did that upgrade it, does that extend the life, or is that just to keep it running for one more year?
My understanding from Rogers to keep it running for another year.
Well, that was rather foolish.
What do you do otherwise?
Get it going.
There's no cost to us to put this thing out for bids, Luke.
No, none.
And that is a step that we have to take if we want to
At some
go down
point,
this.
it is a required step in order to move into a performance contract, yes.
Anybody want to?
These guys might be the only ones that wait bid.
I don't think the list would be very long.
How detailed is, I mean, how much time and work is it gonna be for you to put that, if you do it as a bid?
I believe there's some boilerplates out there that we can utilize. There's other school districts in our area that have gone through
I'm not
performance
talking
contract.
just boiler, I was referring, I know we were referring to the whole project. No?
I don't think so, just to put it out there, but just select a company.
To select a company, we would then decide if a company is selected to proceed to go forward with them to get that detailed analysis or not, based on the cost that each one proposes.
To answer your question, I might just interject a little bit. There's some standard templates that the industries, the school districts are, using. There's only a handful out there that kind of slow it all, they're all pretty similar. So the time commitment from the district would not be that great. You're probably talking maximum 8 hours, and I think it'd be a lot less than that.
Anybody want that form of motion to put it out for bids? I'm just trying to push the meeting along here.
What are we putting on for bids?
Just to select a company, if we want to select one at all. See who else would be interested.
I mean, just be these guys honest.
And then, at that point, the way I understand
I
it,
told that one time, my goodness.
if we decide to go with the company, and then
Yeah.
it'll be costing us.
If we decide to go with a company, there would be a cost associated with creating a detailed plan that would be brought back.
I'll make that motion.
So we got a motion by Jeff to do
Before we get into a second, is there specific language required by the state for sending out a request for proposal for an escrow vendor? Is there any official terminology or language that's necessary to meet the, okay. So, I think Jeff, any way you want to word the motion, I don't see any issues at least I don't worry. Just move forward with a request for proposal for a long-term facilities plan,
Sounds good.
including energy efficiency measures.
Second?
Would that be a time constraint on that, how long, always 6 months, or?
If the board approves it tonight, I would start to prepare the request for proposal. It usually has a standard minimum of 14 days. There might even be a legal requirement of 10 or more days that it needs to be posted. I think it has to be a class 1 notification. Is that legally in the paper? No?
I mean, you can, a lot of districts do. Some just mail out to the prospective company saying they won't be considered responding.
So we minimally would check with the DPI approved list and mail out to those that are geographically proximate and potentially posting in the local paper.
To Glenn's point, maybe it makes sense to mail that out after the holidays.
I'll second it.
Motion by Jeff, second by Larry. Any other discussion?
Who can you dig out the Johnson Control evaluation for us?
Yes.
I think we have an electronic copy, and maybe email it to all of us, just so we have a chance to kind of go through that again and
Absolutely.
see what the roadmap looked like.
I will do so.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I know this is not on the thing, but in the case of the boiler, I know you have budget constraints, things you can do, you can't do, but in a case like that, could you purchase a boiler with the agreement you pay for it next year, so that you don't spend $12,000 fixing up, how much is a new boiler?
Rough cost of a boiler?
For what it's worth, that's exactly what our program would do for you, exactly. Interject here, but what you're asking. You were kind of looking at on an isolated basis, what we're talking about is taking that same concept and looking at it.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm looking at the situation that happened. You had a boiler, go to pot, how much is a new boiler?
Depends on the size, we had a couple $100,000, but commercial boilers are not.
$10,000 or $12,000 to fix it, it's not nearly so foolish as it was about 10 minutes ago.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
All right, number 2, school security.
I'm just going to invite Bill Alloway's here. He's going to join us when we get to that part of the agenda. Thanks again. Thanks, Hans.
Thanks, Luke.
Yes, I will, yeah. It's just like one laptop anyway.
Go down and use that groundwater.
Food for the road.
No, thank you, no more, but thank you very much for the first one.
You're welcome.
That wind was, that's a statement.
Got the 3 chairs right here at the end, so feel free to join us.
That wind, that's.
We've got another seat up front now. Yeah, you want to hang in the back.
Jeff is the last one. He's the last one. Come back in. I'll get the door.
Just a point of clarification from an earlier agenda item. Angie was able to look at the bills payable for the Aramark bill, and that is 2 months' worth of bills on one check. So you're seeing actually that would be roughly half the cost of what you're looking at in the bills payable. Welcome, would you like to just take a moment and introduce yourself?
I'm Gary Roberts, Sergeant with the Mineral Plant Police Department. Do a lot of way with school goes on. Americana.
Well, welcome, and Mr. Steffens, I'll let you take the board agenda and go from there.
All right, cameras in, let's break this into two different items here. Cameras in the classroom. It was brought to me by a few board members. Which have been asking us in the last 2 months, we have approximately $177,000 surplus. And we talked 2 years ago, we started a camera program in our schools, hallways and exterior entrances. I thought maybe this is a possibility to add more cameras into the building, possibly all classrooms. Anybody got any ideas, opinions, comments? Glenn?
Well, if this is, I found out, last couple, 3-4 days, I guess, that it's now streamed to the police station. And One other thing I was interested in now, could that be set up so that people could get onto our website and actually watch your child participating in the class? That would be quite an educational tool and a procurement tool.
Going back to school security, Bill, how often have you used the cameras we have to investigate, look at it?
Every week,
You do?
between missing Chromebooks, locker room, that's a big thing for kids to go in there and leave their pants and their wallets on the floor when they have lockers with locks on them. And one student brought a brand new pair of basketball shoes, dropped them off at 7:30 in the morning, came back at 5:30 that night for practice, and the shoes are gone. Where were they? Well, I set them on the bench. Go back, look at cameras, didn't see anybody suspicious in between those people, throughout the whole day. I went from the time he left the locker room to the time he came back. But we have every class that walks in and out of there is either carrying their shoes or carrying a backpack, so, you can't tell which shoes they're carrying or anything like that.
We had to go back. We're able to go back months.
Yeah, months, we can go back months.
We found something to look back at.
Yeah, that accident in the parking lot Friday night with the school bus.
The school bus, yeah. that was
Back,
on film.
yeah, it was on the film, back into a truck that was parked up there. A student from Stowe was a runaway, went back on the cameras, found out that we thought maybe they had dropped off here, but they know that you could see it walk across the football field, came in from downtown. Just every week there's something that we have to look back. Oh, there was domestic at the school Sunday, was back.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's things, they're not real big things, but we have a student that's supposed to turn his cell phone in every day because he uses it all the time. Well, he turns in a broken phone, and so I went back and I got him twice walking down the hall on his phone. It helps with administration and that type of thing.
What's the need for cameras in the classroom? I don't understand why we would do this.
My personal opinion is I don't think there's a need for it. I think we trust the teachers to teach the students. And for the law enforcement side, we haven't had any reason that we needed a camera.
Inside of class restrooms.
I would feel better, we need a few more cameras in the school. The middle school gym is not covered at all. The band area, going out that door, that's not covered. The outside playground's not covered out back. I would like a camera somewhere along, like the locker room doors. Say that incident with the shoes, if somebody would have went in that front, through the hallway and exited out the back door, it's not on camera, so they could have walked away and you never
The interior of the elementary is not covered at any
Yes.
level,
none of the hallways at the elementary.
or the gymnasium, lunchroom.
So there is a need for more cameras
Yes.
throughout the district.
And as we've done this in the past, we look at, when we first put them in, we had a few incidences that, like in the gym, the cameras were on this end of the gym, looking at the door, and they would go to about the half court line.
Okay.
So, and past the half court, we couldn't see. Well, then, the incident with the video board, that was in the middle school room, or middle school, and we didn't get any of that on the camera. So I would say, some more hallways, exteriors is needed.
Again, what's the need? I mean, we've got some stolen gym shoes. I mean, I don't see a great need for spending money on additional cameras. I'd like to see if we have additional money, that we spend it in a way that has a positive impact on student learning, not monitoring, potentially, gym shoes might get stolen. I just don't think this is a good use of the surplus.
Maybe not, a lot of your bigger schools are going to it. Cases and intruder in there, they know it's registered. They can monitor each room where they're at. It goes to the sheriff's office a lot of it.
Yeah, Iowa Grant has all theirs, I understand. And I don't think it's streamed, it isn't streamed to the sheriff's office yet, so.
We do have it in our SWAT cars, so we can run cameras from the SWAT car. And we do have it set up on TV and PD, that only us and the PD can watch it.
Well, if you did have an intruder in there with a weapon, the only thing then is that you know exactly where they're at and what they were doing.
The cameras in the hallway can tell you where an intruder has gone. You
But
don't
you
need
know what's
cameras in
going
every
on in the
classroom.
room.
We could get a cost for what we need, a cost for total. Would you tell we need them, or with Roger, or who?
Yeah. I went around with Luke, when we put this last round in, and we, like, where were we deficient? And we ended up with 11 cameras we put in.
We added 11 this past summer to get some of our dead spot areas.
Yep.
That were most highly frequently problem areas that we didn't have covered. So we still have a lot of hallways and areas that are not covered, but they haven't been our largely problem area. There's always that next area that becomes the most likely to be the problem area. But I think we've captured what I would consider the low-hanging fruit throughout the district. We've got a fairly good, solid set of eyes out there, but there are certainly areas where we can improve efficiencies. Like you mentioned, some hallways, some gymnasiums, some lunchrooms, and so forth. I think there is a question about the autonomy in the classroom and Big Brother watching for teachers, and attracting and retaining teachers with cameras in every room might be problematic. I haven't surveyed our staff to know that for sure, but I could see that could be a concern. Overall, when I talked with Paul Cruiser, who's our representative from Johnson Controls that installed the cameras to date, he did build the infrastructure so that the 11 cameras that we added this summer were simply just that, added cameras with installation, accord back to the DVR, and everything was good. The type of magnitude of pushing probably 60 more cameras into classrooms is a very big infrastructure build-out. We didn't build with the conceptual idea of having a classroom with a camera in every classroom. So there would be a bigger cost than just the camera to be able to record multiple videos at the same time, recording all the way back 30 days. So, certainly you're right, there's a study that could be done that can pull a quotation together, if that's the desire of the board. I think it might be a little excessive at this point, but we'll let the board decide which direction they'd like to go.
One thing I'd like to add, like the outside cameras, for the vandalism aspect, the playground last year, a good thing is like the liability for the school. If we have something that does happen on school grounds, we have tape of it. We had an incident, was it in the spring when the lady fell outside of the elementary, and she walked right off the sidewalk. And I think that if somebody ever tried to come back after the school, we have and I think the liability aspect is that we have it on camera.
Do the outside and go a lot farther? You can see all the way to the football field from here, could you?
The one looking out this entrance right here, I can get, I can tell if it's a car or truck and what color. And most likely what the easiest thing to do is if we have something out there and somebody leaves the school, I can just track them in the camera what they're wearing, and then you can see, out there, but if you put they call it pan tilt zoom, that's the one you could read a football jersey out in the football field. But those are roughly like $5,000 compared to a couple hundred for a regular camera. I think it's worth it putting the regular cameras in versus that one very expensive camera. And then you'd have to have somebody, if you wanted to zoom it, you would have to have somebody at that control doing the camera.
So we pay a monthly fee then?
No.
Nobody.
We own the equipment and we can manage it and operate it on site.
I hope that we table this and look at it when we look at the big picture as far as the budget, when we start looking into it for next year. So the motion is to table this.
Do we have a second for Lisa's motion?
I would second that.
Yeah, second, Matt. Further discussion? I'd like to say, I would like to see it rolled in, if we decided on the path with the Nexus company or a company like it. I mean, it was in their presentation, security cameras. In that presentation, they said our cameras were outdated, certainly not outdated.
No.
That was just a they misspoke on that.
Yeah, I agree.
I think probably the ones, 11 we need now, don't you?
The 11 is referencing what we put in this summer, so.
Oh, they're already in?
Yes, they're already in.
Okay. I
Yeah.
thought you said
So I
that.
think we've expanded our capacity from, I want to say, it was roughly around 18 in that first wave to the additional 11, so I think we're just under or over 30 right now. Does that sound right?
I think we're at 27.
27?
We had 16 on the first.
16.
None in the elementary hallways though.
Not in the elementary interior hallways. There are now, we went from, I believe, 1 at the entrance to now 3 more on the exterior corners.
So the budget process will start relatively soon. So you object to Roger working with Bill and Luke to come up with the number of cameras that Bill thinks we need in hallways and exterior locations, so we have a number?
No, I think it makes sense to look at what a recommendation might be and where they would be, and then, put it into the big picture and then looking at the budget. So
But-
I don't have a problem.
Come up with a number, Bill. And,
We're good on that.
I think students deserve to be as safe as we are. We haven't had any intruders since we've had this camera here. I used to be real nervous.
So, we got a motion and a second to table this until budget time. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The second part of this agenda item is to advocate for an authorized person in addition to the police liaison to carry a weapon. Again, this came from some school board members to simply defend, protect our kids that are inside these buildings. Currently, we have one dedicated person 2 days a week that'll carry a weapon. Personally, I don't think, I think we could do better, somehow, somehow. With what's going on in today's world. Any other comments?
Well, the only thing I'm interested in is, I would like us to have a resolution to repeal the 1,000-foot gun-free zone and advance that to some members of the legislature, as they are working on some legislation now, it's changing these laws, because a law-abiding citizen could inadvertently pull in here, I don't remember, what is the fine?
I'm not sure. The fine is that you could be arrested if you're here.
Did you say it was 10,000?
Could be up to that, yeah.
Well, that's a little ridiculous about somebody, law-abiding citizen, having a gun in their car at the school. And it's not gonna stop anybody, and it's about time we take the invitation off the door.
I believe that's a place to start, but yeah, and it is is it a state or federal law that you cannot have weapons on school property.
I believe that's a state law.
It is a state law.
Seems like a good law to me. I don't see any reason to change or advocate for changing a law that says no guns in or around the school. It seems like a prudent law.
Well,
Apparently you don't carry a gun. Kids go out hunting in the morning, they can't come out, you know, leave the gun in the trunk locked up.
That
I've
seems
heard that
good.
thought
They
tonight,
should leave their
yeah.
guns at home.
What do they want?
Well, they shouldn't be in the parking lot
why not?
because it's not a good idea.
Okay, now there was a school shooting, and I can't recall the exact place, but it ended when the principal went out to the parking lot, got his gun, and come in and shot the perpetuator.
I don't think he even shot him, I think he just.
Pointed a gun at him, anyway it ended. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a weapon is a good guy with a weapon.
I don't think more guns is the solution to minimizing gun violence.
Well, you may think that, but a lot of us live in reality and understand how it works.
I'm not so much against that as I am, I got caught, first to come out here tonight, when I got in the car. Not thinking, it's there all the time. I got a concealed carry and it's there. If I get caught tonight, but it's home now. But you don't think of that every night when you go. It's serious, I mean.
And I've been in here all the time with a pocket knife, I don't have it tonight because I changed my pants. But that pocket knife has been in my pocket since about 4th grade, and the only person that ever got caught with it was myself. And as far as that goes, as far as my guns, Ted Kennedy killed a lot more people with his car than I ever killed with my guns.
If anything, I think the sign in front of the school should be expanded to say, because right now it says no concealed weapons. It should be no weapons, period. Concealed, brandished, no weapons, here or anywhere near the school.
The state law changed, officers now can carry out duty in school, so they come to that has just changed. Gun-free zones attract shootings. You don't see somebody walking into a Cabela's and trying to shoot the place up. If you look at all the statistics about where the shootings are at, they're at gun-free zones.
James Holmes in Colorado that shot up during Batman a couple of years ago, he actually drove by other movie theaters that you could have guns in. He went to one that specifically didn't have guns.
He drove 8 miles further to get to that.
Yeah. And that was because it was a target-rich environment for victims.
2 months later or so, there was, I think it was in Missouri, the owner of the theater had hired an off-duty deputy sheriff. The guy come in here, tried the same thing. Fortunately, he shot one person, but that was all he shot. Otherwise, that could have been another 10 or 12 or 20 or whatever. The big shooting at McDonald's some years ago down south. One of the ladies had a permit to carry. She left her purse in the car, and she said that had she had her purse with her, that only a couple of people would have died. So it's all the statistics, the media and all the hype in the papers and everything, because they want to take everyone's guns away. Well, that's the Second Amendment. I'm a little bit partial to the Second Amendment. And it doesn't do any good to take honest people's guns. Because if they do, all it is dishonest people that have guns are going to take advantage of them. In every country where they've done this, crime has increased tremendously. Australia, New Zealand are prime examples.
So people are eager. Forgot your name, gentlemen.
Eric.
Eric. To get trained and certified as a police officer, I don't know how many hours it takes, and I'm sure you got to keep up on your training and stay current. Just want to ask you right now, do you think if Mr. Broglie had the same amount of training and was certified, and stayed current on that training, he could carry a weapon at the elementary school safely, as you do up here?
I guess I'll take that. I've been training law enforcement officers for over 20 years now. I think in all of this, it's a good discussion to have. However, I think, talking about changing the state law and who can carry a gun and all this and that probably is in the distance. We're in the present got Bill here 2 to 3 days a week. I think it would be much more prudent to be looking at, why isn't he here every day of the week? As a trained person with police training and military training, he's somebody that's going to be a lot greater asset and to be talking about what could be down, into the future. Is it a possibility? I can tell you that it takes a great deal of training, not only on the weapon side, but also in handling situations, dealing with that type of stress, and you're talking about the most extreme situations, especially if you're talking the setting of the school and something were to happen, it's going to take a lot of training. It's something that as I train people in the police academy, that I don't think they're ready to go out the door and handle something like that. So that's a tough question to ask.
I understand.
But as a, as a parent, as a police officer, I would say to really consider what you have for an asset already and question, what would it take to get him here every day of the week? Because if a problem happens on the days that he's not here, you're going to be scrambling for solutions. When that would be one of the easiest and most logical solutions to start with. Beyond that, to answer your question, what type of training would it take? I think it would take a great deal, and then you would really have to look at the long-term liability to the school. How would you make that selection process to decide who could go to that training and who would be responsible for that? And would it be every day, or would it be only in the most extreme circumstance?
And I'm not saying it'd be easy.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it'd be fast.
Yeah.
What I am saying is the discussion has to start. Because we send our kids off to a building with knowing the world we live in today, unprotected. You don't send your kids anywhere else, with that kind of odds.
Yeah, and it's not to say that that's something that, whether as a school district or whether the state moves in that direction.
And I don't know, and that's what
I'm not sure if they
we're not going to change a lot tonight.
Right.
We have to try to draft a resolution in support
Right.
of at least having them have a discussion.
Well, they're working on some legislation, because I've been talking to the legislators. And I'm not advocating that we have a bunch of people get concealed carry permits so they can carry the gun into, if you could allow somebody to come in with a concealed carry permit, and then you put a sign on the door that says, there may be armed people on this premises. And that's all it's gonna take most of the time. They don't know who's got a gun, who doesn't. And they want it to be really successful because it makes a bigger splash in the newspapers. And the other thing I was looking for was a resolution, well, one for the repeal of the 1,000-foot gun-free zone, which I think is ridiculous. And I talked to some, I didn't call you because you called down to the office and there's nobody there, you don't get anybody, so I called.
Everyone's at the sheriff's department.
Yeah, I know, so I talked to Sheriff Mitchell and I talked to Reggie Gill, Sheriff in Lafayette County, what they thought about this. And Reg alluded to the same thing, you would need a lot of training, and I understand that. You can get, I didn't know what a concealed carry permit constituted, but you don't have to be able to handle a gun. Well, my wife wanted to get a gun and put in her purse, and I said, you'd probably shoot yourself. You gotta learn how to use a gun before you start carrying one around. But all I was advocating was that we draft a resolution, send to the legislator and perhaps to the other schools at CESA 3 to see if they would join in, or to prompt something. I've talked to a couple of schools, board members and other schools already, to allow concealed carry to carry. And most of them, I don't think that you're gonna have somebody come in here and if somebody comes in that they're gonna start shooting like this randomly, because then you're just making it worse because you're doing the same thing they do. And I don't think that's gonna happen. I think I saw some information that most of the people aren't even gonna, if they have concealed carry, aren't even gonna get your gun out anyway, so.
I talked to some business owners, and maybe you can straighten them out. They said now if they don't have a sign, or do have a sign, I'm gonna get shot by somebody, then I can sue them. because they didn't have an armed man, or I couldn't have a gun.
That's always been kind of the concern or the discussion, but I don't know whether that's ever
See,
actually
a lot of
proved
them
out.
taking signs down, I know that.
It's happened, I mean, guns are not the problem, people are the problem. And another little interesting side note to all of this, I believe that these school shooters, the one in Colorado, the theater, and the fellow in New Jersey, both received ribbon when they were in school.
I move that we not have this resolution. I have no interest in being affiliated with such a resolution.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
So motion not to have a resolution. Seconded by Julie. Any other discussion?
I wouldn't know what I'm voting on. What resolution are we talking about at this
The
point?
resolution that Glenn has read.
This, we've got a couple different things there, right?
Well, one is to change the law so that you can, if you have a concealed carry permit, you can be on school property. And the other
It's a
is,
state law, right? Can we even change that?
He's trying to
you
come up
can't
with a
change it,
resolution.
they're already working on it, the legislators, talk to legislators about this.
We want to give them some power, that's our support.
We just want to support it.
Thank you. I understand.
We're not advocating it, it's already in the process. It's, all we're doing is advocating support for it.
As the district, as a board.
Right.
Because individually, we can support whatever we
Right, you
want, right?
can,
Do it, I mean, rally whoever you want to.
Any other discussion? So the motion on the floor is to not support a resolution by the Mineral Point, a resolution drafted by the Mineral Point School Board
For gun-free zone.
for the 1,000-foot gun-free zone, Glenn,
Pardon?
for the 1,000-foot.
Yeah, I repealed the law, I had the number off of it, then I got so much stuff that I kind of got mixed up, so.
All right, we'll do a roll call.
Now, let's see, we better explain this now, if we go, yes, that means we won't have the resolution, right, just so I understand this.
A positive vote affirms that you do not want the resolution.
Okay.
A yes vote would be you do not want the resolution. A no vote would be yes, you do want the resolution.
Us country fellas gotta have the things planned for us sometimes.
If the yes vote says we're going to try and help.
A yes vote would say you do not want this resolution.
Hay,
yes.
Kinch,
No.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stevenson,
Yes.
Basting,
No.
Dolphin,
No.
Stefan.
No.
4 to 3, no.
Anybody want to make a motion in support of the resolution drafted by the Mineral Point School Board?
I'll make a motion to draft this board.
We'll draft the resolution, we will approve it in January then?
I think that would be good because then there's a chance for the public to come and speak if they want.
Well, by that time, we might have something from the legislature on exactly how they want it worded. Because they alluded to that they would.
So it's still possible for a motion to support the drafting of a resolution, and then next month we will officially adopt the resolution.
If it's passed, yes. But we can have a motion now to support it.
To draft it.
To draft.
And allow for a month for public comment.
Either way.
So the motion is made by Larry to draft the resolution for approval in January.
Okay, if we voted the one there down, then what? We wouldn't have had any time to discuss it.
That's
This
true.
is just the resolution.
Oh, why can we change, have two different resolutions here?
Because we don't have an official resolution in front of us, I guess, is what I was
We
going.
didn't put it in down, either did we?
But this will give, if this passes, then we'll give time for resolution to be written, plus it'll give the public a chance to come.
We can talk or contact our state legislators, if they have any input. The police department input. So, motion by Larry to support the drafting of a resolution. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Glenn. Any other discussion?
This resolution would be helping to support the state in their movement and basically allow a kid to bring a gun to school and leave it in his car. Is that correct?
Who knows, you got a hunting license.
Yeah, well, you don't
It's a be a legal gun.
Would it allow kids to bring concealed weapons into the school?
Well, they can permit, let's roll.
Let's say they,
No, they can get it.
how, can you be 18 and get it, how old do you have to be to have a concealed carry?
You'd have to be 21 to have a handgun.
So we had people
Buy a
bringing
handgun.
concealed weapons to athletic events.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, it wasn't too many years ago, the kids used to hunt rabbits, pheasants on their way to school, and put their guns in the corner of the school.
I did that a lot.
I just think they're young kids with lots of hormones and emotions going on. Somebody gets mad, they got a gun in the car, and all of a sudden it's there. It's not at school, it's not at school, it's not to do anything, so.
Well, have you ever handled guns, Matt?
I have no interest in doing so.
Okay, then you don't know anything about it.
I wouldn't
There were
say
guns,
for sure that I do.
there were guns in about 3 corners of our kitchen when I was a kid. And I never touched one of them because I knew what they were and I knew what they did. When my dad shot at something, it died. That left a pretty strong impression upon me. I knew what they were for.
That's why we're not voting on the actual resolution that just voting support.
We're just trying to clarify what's going to be in this resolution.
So what we're doing is supporting the repeal of these 2 laws. And
With the input of the police department or state legislators, we go over the State Troopers Association.
We probably should just focus on the Marathon community first. I mean, we haven't really even vetted out what the people that vote want to do. So I think, I mean, before we rally support outside Mineral Point, it would be prudent to give it a fair shake in the community.
it's not a Middle Point thing, it's a state of Wisconsin.
If the Mineral Point School Board is saying that we're going to support it, I think that
Well,
we should
I
support
guess if
something
we
that our
vote for it, we
constituents
can-
vote
We
for.
can do that.
You know, and support it.
So we got a motion and a second. Once again, the motion is going to read to support drafting a resolution in support of eliminating the 1,000-foot barrier,
No gun-free zone.
gun-free zone.
And repeal the concealed carry. That'd be 2 different resolutions. Like I said, yeah, I think
Probably
that would
it's
be
best
better.
to do it as separate resolutions.
Because they would probably be separate pieces of legislation. And then I think we should forward this to the other schools in the Cecil district.
Okay, is everybody clear on the motion? Roll call?
Dolphin,
Yes.
Hay,
No.
Kinch,
Yes.
Lindsay,
No.
Stevenson,
No.
Basting,
Yes.
and Stefas.
Yes. Okay. We talked about a concealed permit, separate motion.
Yeah, it would be advisable if you want to make a motion for resolution regarding concealed. It'd be best to take that as a separate resolution that the board adopts, because there may be differing opinions on each one of those resolutions.
We're looking at how we'll carry in schools.
Maybe Glenn, clarify the second resolution that you're referencing, because I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, I guess you'd have to, on school properties, so that would be in there, out the parking lot or whatever.
authorized people to carry.
Well, you have to have a concealed carry permit. If some lady has a concealed carry permit, and she gets down there 1,000 feet from here, she's got to take her gun out and lay it down before she walks her child the rest of the way to the school.
You're talking school property, not
Right.
inside the school building.
School property, inside or outside or whatever.
Oh, so,
Can we just do that? Well, I mean, doesn't,
How's it different than what just happened?
I'm not certain, because I'm not familiar with both of these laws that are being proposed. It's not part of my advocacy awareness right now. What I'm understanding is there's a gun-free zone which limits any firearm within 1,000 feet. There's also a conceal and carry rule that says no unauthorized person other than patrol officers on or off duty are able to carry a concealed weapon inside of schools. So in essence, they might be working in tandem with each other, but I think they're two different pieces of legislation. Help me out, are they two specific laws that might be different? Is the gun-free zone different than the law of officers on duty and off duty? Is there two different statutes there?
I think that's what he's trying to say, is that basically someone with a concealed carry could come on to campus, basically. I'm not sure whether he's trying to say whether they can come into the school. That's something that,
It sounds like to expand it beyond the authorized, or off-duty or on-duty police officers. You would expand that scope to allow anyone with a concealed carry, which I think is, it's getting back to the same.
I think it is too. I think we get it covered in the previous motion.
And just to clarify, so that the public understands, that by this vote, it's drafting a resolution that you will then show to legislators. This is not changing the school policy. Guns are still not allowed in the parking lot or in the school. The law still applies, and this board has no ability to change the law anyway. All we can do is advocate for our positions.
Correct. We
Okay.
can't change it.
And if this does pass, I would just like to say, I would be advocating for the opposite on my own behalf.
Well, until last year, off-duty police officers and retired police officers could not carry in the school. And this is not something that's untried. Many states already have this law because we had our law in 1990 on the 1,000-foot gun-free zone when many of the other states did not have this until after they had their concealed carry permit. And therefore, any of their concealed carry people can carry on school property. And I haven't heard of any persons with concealed carry shooting up any place lately.
We used to teach hunter safety here. Until they passed the law, we couldn't have guns on school grounds.
All right, final budget, allocation of surplus.
After the final aid estimates and property valuation was done, we determined that we had a $200,000 surplus. We just recently, in this earlier, yeah, by the way, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for your opinions. Earlier in the meeting, we reallocated through our budget amendment roughly $20,000 of that surplus, and that's why that number came down from roughly 200 to 177. That 177,953 has yet to be allocated in this fiscal school year. And so we have the ability to allocate that surplus in any way that you so choose. At this time, it would be my recommendation to hold some of those monies aside for potentially the long-term facility planning. If we decide to go forward with a request for proposal, that obviously was not budgeted for in this budget. So we could hold some dollars aside for that effort if we so chose. There's also other studies for commissioning and pulling dark fiber from the highway up to the school and from the school to the elementary. It's been a working project or process, and to pull some dollars aside to conduct a study of what that would entail and potentially put together a request for proposal would be two areas where I would sidestep that to help us with some long-term planning that would actually save the district dollars going forward by doing either one of those two projects. Again, it would be more of a long-term study. It wouldn't really commit us to doing any type of actual work in either one of those two areas. We certainly have plenty of capital maintenance projects that we have deferred and put off that could be used for some of these dollars. We could put a priority list together if you felt capital needs were something to be considered. But again, in conjunction with not having the long-term study, it would be a little bit reserved to use any of those dollars now. I would much rather see what the long-term facility plan suggests, and potentially we could use some of these dollars in capital projects that would immediately start saving us some energy efficiencies savings as soon as next year if implemented this summer. So until we have that study, I'm a little with reservation to use a lot of these funds. There are some other emerging instructional needs that are coming up as we continue to look at curriculum and staffing, and some of these dollars can be set aside for that purpose as well. If there's a strong feeling by the board to look at using these dollars in any particular way, it's your wherewithal to determine how to use those dollars in what buckets, and then I'll allocate it accordingly. We can continue to table this until we have the long-term planning facility study back in hand, or you can push that down to the district level, and we will allocate those needs as they come forward.
Do we have an emergency fund now?
It would be our fund balance. You know, if a boiler went down today, we would borrow against fund balance.
How much is that?
It's roughly 15%, 18% of our operating budget.
$1.5 million.
Thank you.
Where'd the other first money out of this go?
The first
No,
amount,
the one that you said we spent 20,000 something already.
yeah, that was a reallocation. It was redistributing what we thought we had was surplus, really had to go to Fund 38. Those were that fundraising dollars.
I believe we should take this money and roll into the budget process. And if at the end of the year, before we approve next year's budget, we see next year looks better than expected, we then come up with a list at that time.
Unfortunately, these dollars aren't able to be carried over, so we would have to either roll them into fund balance at the end of the year if they were not used, or Fund 46 would be an option, but they're not dollars that are carried over. So they're dollars that were levied this year and need to be spent in this fiscal year, and then would be aided next year on those expenditures.
It's gotta be by January 1st?
By July, June 30th,
Okay.
fiscal year June 30th.
And Fund 46 is that one where we still get credit for spending it,
Correct.
but it has to sit there for 5 years.
Correct.
And then can only be spent on capital needs.
Correct. Yep.
But we could just put it in fund balance and then pull out fund balance for next year's budget, right?
That is correct.
Well, we could leave it alone in case something happens, like our boiler goes to pot, and we need $12,000 again.
Yeah. So why don't we just wait on this for a little bit?
Mhm. It's an option.
That was the intent of what I was trying to say.
I would think
As
that,
long as we don't lose it.
by the 1st of July, I think we should be able to figure something out to spend it on. And that's not past performance.
We'll probably have something to spend on that.
usually have a problem spending money.
All right, is that what the board wants to do? Just kick the can down the road on this $177,000?
Wait, what's the hurry, you know?
Okay. Financial audit.
I do have 3 copies of financial audit. It is also loaded in your board book, the electronic copy. So if anybody would like a hard copy, I have 3 that you can take with you. I have a copy in my office that I would check out to anybody, or you can come in and inspect it in my office. Marcia also has a copy of the financial audit in her office that you could check out or use from her location, but we do want to keep 2 copies on site, but these 3 I would lend out to anybody who would like to look at it. It's more for information for the board this time, as I've reviewed the financial audit as prepared by Johnson Block. I didn't find any material deficiencies. They do list some long-term deficiencies that have been recognized since my job with the board and the district. There's nothing that has given me pause or concern. Johnson Block is able and willing to come in and share their findings if the board so decided. This is your opportunity to take a first look at the audit. You can approve it tonight if you've already reviewed it and have no questions. You can have this tabled to our next meeting. It is in the information discussion area. And you can approve the January meeting with further additional time to review.
And Johnson Block's coming next month?
That would be determined by the board. If you'd like to request their attendance, they have been willing to come in and present their findings. They did that, I believe, 3 years ago. It's been probably the last 2, I don't believe they came to the board and presented.
I think it would be worth having come. I personally would like that. And then I would move the rest of this if the motion is necessary.
Don't cost us nothing, right?
Costs us nothing, we move into action for January. We would have a representative from Johnson Block who prepared the audit to be able to answer your questions, and then we would want to, it's not necessary, it's not required by DPI rule, but I think it's always good policy to have the board officially approve the audit, and then we, at that time, post it to our website. It's available for inspection and so forth.
But once again, currently, you approve the audit, Marcia approves the audit.
Both Marcia and I have reviewed the audit. We have both signed off on it in its final form just before tonight. So this is not a draft form, this is the final audit.
All right, we'll bring that back in January. Items for action.
Loaded up in your board packet is the WASB board development tool. Again, it has the survey tool the district used, I believe, 2 years ago. It allows the board to do a self-assessment for free using the school's perceptions survey information and data. It allows for internal discussions and growth around a plan if the board chooses to use it in such a manner. WASB does offer services to come in and support the board in areas that are deemed deficient and can bring in specific people that could speak to any of the items that were found with low markings. So I need to respond to WASB and let them know if we plan to use the survey tool.
How much is it?
It is free to use the survey tool. It is free, you get a general analysis of the results for free. If you want to use WASB services to come in to address any of those deficiencies, that would have a fee associated with it. If we found, for instance, that communication was a deficiency and WASB wanted to come in, or we asked WASB to come in and share with us best strategies around communication or transparency, that's where a fee may be incurred.
I move that we take advantage of the free option only.
Motion by Lisa, do we have a second?
I'll second
Second by Larry. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
it. That's where it's not costing any money up to this point.
Correct.
That's part of Lisa's motion. All in favor, say aye.
What exactly are we going to be discussing here about the government? The things that we could do to change the laws regarding schools, or whether we agree with the laws on schools, or what? Kind of a little bit dubious there as far as I'm concerned. I'm not- What we're going to learn about.
I think it has to do, correct me if I'm wrong, with how the school board conducts its own business. I don't think it has to do with changing the laws. It's how we function.
So whether we adopted the government's policy or not, is that what it's about, or?
It's not about whether we adopted the governance policy, no.
This just talks about, the tool is an online survey. It's aligned with the keywords of school boards that was designed for Wisconsin school boards. And the intent is to see which areas of governance they are in agreement on and which areas require more discussion. It's intended to be the start of a conversation at the local level. And then we have the option to use WASB services to backfill any of those discussions if we so choose. That is a secondary component, and the motion on the floor is to stop prior to using any WASB services. They would always be available to us, but the survey, to the extent that allows us to find out which areas we have agreement on and which areas require more discussion, that piece is free.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, about what the fourth word in there, about the 12th word in that sentence answered my questions.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Opposed?
No.
Left voted against.
Larry, I was just gonna, I think something got skipped over on the agenda. I don't know if that was intentional or not. The superintendent, that got skipped over on the agenda. I didn't know if that was.
So thank you.
That is closed session at the end.
Oh.
Actually, we moved it to open.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, we did move it to open, thank you. I moved that to
All right.
open session. Just to finish up that piece of the agenda then, under action, WASB school perceptions. This is the actual survey. It has a unique code for each person, so each survey would be unique to you. It is, I would assume anonymous, but it might ask you to fill in your name at some point, but if you just take one of those forms and pass it around. If you need any assistance with using computers or signing into the school perception survey, you can certainly come in on site, and Angie and I will be happy to give you our computers and get you into the survey, so you can just take that at our location, and we're here to support you with that.
So going back to the superintendent's evaluation is an open session?
Yes, I move that to open session, information for items of discussion, item number 5. I'm fine with my mid-year evaluation in open session, and I didn't think it was something that needed to go in closed session. It's more for purposes of communication and transparency. So I would start by just sharing, I appreciate the opportunity to be evaluated by the board. It's,
Can you back up for
yeah,
a second?
please.
Why are we doing this now? I mean, the policy says Luke gets evaluated in the spring is what the policy says.
First mid-year.
I think it usually starts in February.
Yeah,
The mid-year.
I mean, that's when it's.
it seems premature,
That's not what I question.
Right.
Yeah, mid. I
Again,
think last year we did it in January, or it was in February by the time we like introduced it and had a discussion around it.
it was expressed to me by some fellow school board members. And I never go into closed session, and next time, I'm sure you can be aware of what's going on.
I did send an email notification to all board members to that effect.
All right.
I move that we move this back to closed session, come back out after.
I think it's up to Luke whether or not his evaluation is done
Can we
in
do
an
that?
open meeting or in a closed meeting.
Those things closed session before or not?
Well, it was,
Okay,
yes,
one
it
way or
was.
the other.
It was actually posted.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway.
No, I'm not complaining, I'm just questioning whether,
But even when a notice says that something might be in closed session, or it says closed session, you still have to make a motion and it's still debated. So it doesn't mean that something necessarily goes into closed session.
Certain things have to.
Certain things have to go in closed session, but when you're talking about personnel matters, the person who is the subject of the discussion, it's their right to have it be an open session.
I missed the email. When was the email sent out?
Saturday morning, roughly about 9 a.m.
The one you last meeting?
I did send an email out through board book Saturday morning at 9 a.m. that the board book had been updated to move that item to open
I
session.
think mine came today around 4 o'clock.
I got mine Saturday.
Did you say? About the change in the closed session, right?
Okay, what's the board's wish? We want to do it or not?
I don't see why we're doing it now. I would push it to.
I mean, we got plenty on the agenda. Okay, let's make a motion then. You want to make a motion, Lisa, to move this to February?
Yeah, I move that we follow our policy and do this, later in the year.
I think it's a spring, so spring is kind of vague, and in Wisconsin, that could be December through.
I mean, the weather's very nice, but it technically is not.
You got a second, please?
Yeah, second.
Second by Matt. So we will move the superintendent's mid-year evaluation to February.
When does the automatic renewal go into effect? For your second year?
Contractually, wanted to say it was
October, November?
September, October, somewhere in there.
I might be looking into that, I'd like to know exactly when that is.
Sure.
And my last please.
You bet.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
No.
no,
Motion carried. Jeff and Glenn voted no. So the development, the Crosby development tool is taken care of.
Yes, that was taken care of. So we are then,
Community
I
fund.
do want to mention to Larry that when you have 3 board members, the rule of the board by you and Luke was that it goes on to the agenda. And you had Larry, Glenn, and myself, that requested this. I just want that made to be known. It's like, we're not following the rules. So we may want to remember that the next time we want to decide whether we follow a rule or not follow a rule.
Do it in order, Jeff. I'll look into it. Make that part of the minutes. Ian. Number 2, community foundation.
The board has a strategic plan to have an operational community foundation by the end of the school year. We've had the opportunity to review materials from 2 different organizations. One foundation is through the Madison Community Foundation, one foundation is through Southwest Wisconsin. Both of these foundations, if you look through the materials, are very similar in nature. There's some subtle nuances between both. I just have a personal preference to work with the Madison Community Foundation only because it's something I'm more familiar with. But I have no concerns or reservations about the Southwest Foundation. So I would leave that up to the board to decide the direction that they would like to go, if at all. And I'll take your lead on that direction.
What is Mineral Point SD endowment?
School district, there's the Acorn Fund and then the endowment fund. The endowment opens up right away after a lump sum of money is received, and the Acorn Fund builds that endowment fund up over time until it gets to the time where it sets in motion a full endowment.
Okay, so that's not where it's placed. That is
Correct.
just a type.
Correct.
That's what I wanted to
Yes.
clarify. I spoke to Ross Smith about this, and the Farmers Savings Bank would be willing to do that for much less than 1%. I did not get a quote on the amount. But I think they should probably get a little, if we do vote to do this, they should get a little interest in their way, because I think there's a scoreboard over here with their name on it, and maybe one out in the gym too.
Glenn, I can kind of answer that. So also, we have Farmers Savings Bank people on the community. The community is looking at an endowment, and there are 2 employees from Farmers Savings Bank that are on that committee, and Lisa can talk to us a little bit. And they actually cannot do it from a tax deductible standpoint and an estate giving standpoint. So people cannot deduct the money that they give if we stipend it through the
So
Farmers
then
Savings Bank.
Ross misinformed me then?
Well, like I
So I
said,
never specifically asked him about the tax deductibility.
well, we've had, like I said, we have Joe Whitmer and Mary Jo Sinetti both on the committee for the Community Endowment Foundation, and they are both with Farmers Savings Bank, and they both agree that they need to outsource their endowment as well.
I think that's what Logan told us a couple months ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that question was asked.
For what it's worth, the Community Foundation is going to go with Southern Wisconsin, not the we met with both representatives of both. Really like the woman from Southern Wisconsin. She would be the person that we deal with. And if the school and the community went with the same foundation, they would be separate funds, but we could market them together. So there would be some benefit of going with the same.
So why did you guys pick that one over?
I think the committee thought that might be some reluctance on people's part to donate to a Madison-based organization. And the woman we were dealing with, I can't remember her name, she's from Platteville, and she goes around to the different areas. I think she started, she worked with the Iowa Grant.
Weston?
Barb Doss is her name, and I called Hillsborough. Kurt Wazarek, who was formerly at Iowa Grant, and he had a good experience with them at Iowa Grant, and then started the foundation up at Hillsborough, and it's been very successful for them. Barb has previous experience with UW-Platteville. She was one of the head fundraising donors for the Alumni Foundation at UW-Platteville, so she's experienced in that.
She's on the Platteville School Board too. I mean, she really seems like she's speaking the same language.
Is she like herself, or does she have some staff?
She is staff, It's a big organization that's been around
I guess I
for
think
more
that,
than 20 years, and I can't remember the number, Joel, the size of the whole endowment is pretty big.
Yes.
I think we definitely need to do something like this, and I think that the chamber is going with Southwest, we need to at least look into that also.
I would agree.
Both, you know, if you're set to make a decision, that's fine. Both, I think, I know Barb for sure has offered to come to the school board meeting if you'd like to hear from her personally, and I would imagine that Madison would as well too, so if that would matter to you, we can get them both here or here.
We need to think outside the box. We've been saying this, I brought this up 25 years ago, and it's like, you know, people that, I mean, my parents, for example, when they passed away, maybe would have left something to the school if this was in place. So maybe others will do the same, and it would benefit the school.
Do you know about the Southwest Foundation to support that?
It goes as far over as Janesville.
Okay,
So it's southern Wisconsin.
thank you. Is this similar?
It is very similar. I've read both materials from both organizations. Joel has attended meetings with both representatives, and as we conferred, it really, I won't speak for you, but you know, certainly my own reservations are none in either organization. I'm completely comfortable with both. Would you have a preference, or are they equal the same as you?
I thought they were very similar, very similar. Both interest rates are determined by their boards, you know, and just, there are a lot of similarities to look through. I mean, you have seen both, Lisa, so.
I think we like the southern Wisconsin one, we felt like, as far as, you know, interacting with the foundation, we'd be dealing with this one particular person who we met and who seemed to understand this, our small town.
So the community for sure is going to go with
Yes.
the Southern Wisconsin
Yes.
Community Foundation? Okay.
Community Leadership Alliance that I used to work for also uses the Community Foundation of Southwest Wisconsin for their endowment as well.
And to just reiterate,
Experience with
sorry, to just reiterate what Lisa said, she was spot on in the sense that the two funds would be separate, so somebody could, you know, they're not intermingled. I mean, you can donate to the school and it will go to the school, you can donate to the community, it'll go to the community, but we can have, you know, like, one informational meeting for the town jointly, so they're not, you know, getting bombed. What is an endowment? How do you donate? You know, things like that. So we can do some joint efforts if you do choose the Southwest, but the funds are separate.
So are we ready to make a decision tonight, or?
I move that we go with the southern Wisconsin Foundation.
I'll second that.
We got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? We'll go roll call on this.
Okay.
Yeah, that stepped out.
Do you want me to wait?
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I had to walk halfway around the building.
So Jeff, you made a motion to go with the Southern Community Foundation,
Okay.
and a second. Do a roll call.
Okay. Hay, Kinch,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stevenson,
Yes.
Basting,
Yes.
Dolphin,
Yes.
Stefas.
Yes. School calendar.
We have before the board the opportunity to look at and approve the 2016 school calendar. A quick look at the school calendar. Trying to get this a little bit larger for you. Basically, on student contact days, the 176 calendar, that's 176 student contact days, has no school on each of the days in October, November, February, and April. There are full days of school on October and February, and then there would be full days and half days in the 180-day calendar. So again, we consider a contact day as a day where students report for any time period throughout the day. The staff days per calendar, there would be additional professional development days to keep all of the staff working days up at 190, regardless of which calendar is selected. Just how many professional development days or work days are in each calendar would be dependent on what's selected. I have preloaded the 176-day calendar and the 178-day calendar. I can answer questions about either. Taking you out to a live Survey Monkey. I just want to refresh in case anybody's put anything out today. Let's go to analyze results. Right now, what you're looking at is live results of the 106 people that have answered the survey about their opinion. This was sent out to staff and parents of students. The 176-day option has a 55% approval rating. The 178 has a 33, and the 180 has an 11. So with that, the board has the ability to accept, amend, or reject any of the calendars. And we look forward to your questions and discussion.
I couldn't open, so on the 176 versus the 178, it's only 2 days. What's the starting date and what's the?
In both cases, I'll just start with the 176 as was most popular. In all calendars, they all start September 1st, and they all conclude June 2nd as the last day of school.
Would the start time and time of the day, the school day be different under the different calendars?
There's no proposal to change the start time or end time, no.
A couple questions I did answer from parents that responded to my email. I did point out to them, they said, well, all these are the same, start and end day, but I did point to the inclement weather days, which I think are different, so those could alter the end day. The 176-day option only has 3 built-in inclement weather days, so if you get more than 3 snow days, you're probably going to be making up time because you're at the minimal instructional minutes for DPI. And then the 178 has 5 built in, so it's kind of a, what do you think is going to happen kind of thing.
It's gonna rain all winter.
The 180 one is in June, I'll get it.
The 180-day also ended June 2nd and would have 7 built-in days that could be released without having to make up school.
And that's starting the same as we are this year?
Correct, the first permissible date, which is September 1.
No, I mean, our start time and our end time each day.
Yes, still starting at 8, concluding at 3:25. The
The
committee
only
would work
complaint that I'm still getting is the number of people that have talked to me, they don't like the Wednesday early release, they prefer it on Friday.
Okay.
I prefer you not have it.
So the biggest difference is the snow days. We got 3 built in the 176.
Correct.
5 into the 178, 7 into
The 180
days.
And is there such a thing as if we pick the 180, just for an example, and if we had 3 snow days, can we vote like, I believe I granted this year and the school year 4 days sooner? If
Yes.
we didn't use the 7?
Yes, you could, for instance, in the 176-day might be the easiest example. There are 3 additional days that are above the DPI minimum that are built in. After the 3rd day, if we were to lose school, we'd have to, by DPI rule, make that up. So you could potentially end school 3 days earlier if we didn't use a snow day.
And that's, what about if you had a 2-hour delay?
2-hour delay would count as a prorated portion of a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how was your committee, what did your committee of teachers, what was their feeling and which calendar did they want?
It mostly was 176. There was a few that leaned a little bit toward 178. Very few found interest in the 180. We did consider smaller breaks around the holidays and spring break. They did consider moving spring break to Easter, but Easter this year is April 16th, which is a very late, potentially spring break year, and they thought that was too long of a run to try to get to spring break in April this year, so that might be a consideration in future years. A lot of strong support for a June 2nd end date, very little support for a June 9th end date. My only concern in the calendar, which I wouldn't rate to the level of a high concern, but we traditionally have had 180 days of instruction. And so when we go down by 176, you're essentially losing a week of school. And, you know, when you think about high standards expectations and what we could do with a week of instruction, that does give me pause, but not to the extent that I would override the overwhelming sentiment of 176 or 178 as the preferred model.
And why do we even have early release if we're gonna build in 14 days for, why couldn't we use that for our PLC?
When you look at the actual days built in for the PLC, 3 of those are vacation days, those are fixed. That's the Labor Day, I can go back to the Memorial Day and Thanksgiving are built into the calendar. There's 3 professional days before school and 1 work day before school, that's traditional, so these have not changed from our normal schedule. The other areas where you'll see consistency is a work day at the end of semester, so that hasn't changed. And then the parent-teacher conferences have always counted for 2 days, they continue to count for 2 days. And then there's what are considered 2 floating work days.
It's the same as what we have.
It's essentially the same with just the minor of, you know, the February 24th date, the October 28th date. Remember, October 28th used to be the old teacher convention, so there's this sentiment that that's a day that we should have off. The February 24th date is just a good, if you look at the calendar, a break. When we come off of your holiday break, you have 4 straight weeks of school in January and 4 in February. That's a date that just people need a breather before they get into another full week of March before they get to spring break. So it'd be 12 consecutive weeks of school without a legitimate day off. Also happens to be state tournament weekend, which I hear is popular in Mineral Point for wrestling.
So do you guys have any comment on these 3 calendars? Do you guys have a preference?
Did the committee, was that shared with them on the 178 or 180 if we didn't use the snow days that they would possibly come off for the end of the year?
That was not a consideration that we discussed. That came
Okay.
up tonight was the first time. It was actually ending earlier than June 2nd.
Do you want to communicate that to them and we can revisit this? And we don't need to decide the calendar, right?
I think that decision can be made following a predetermination of 176, 8, or 80. We can always decide if we do or don't want to release early, should there be snow days or not. I think that decision could be made after the fact. We could get some data around that. I don't think that the decision would be, I guess it could be, you know, whether you want to get out 3, 5, or 7 days early. I'm not a big fan of teaching to the minimum. So that would be my recommendation to the board.
What's your recommendations to me?
No, my recommendation would be 176 or 178, but not getting out of school earlier than June 2nd if they're not used. I think those instructional days are important, and we're already approaching the minimum DPI, which we've never been even remotely close to, far exceeded in the past.
Personally, I
Those
like
last
it.
2 or 3 days, they don't do anything anyway.
Wherever you end, the last 2 or 3 days, they don't do anything anyway. So wherever you end that, however far back you want to back it up.
Like if you don't announce that you're gonna do the 1 or 2 days, if they don't use them as snow days, you know, until right at the very end.
Yeah, there is certainly school wrap-up semester exams, so when I say they don't use them anyway, they don't use them for instructional purposes, they're using them for final exams, and there is a lot of class wrap-up that goes along. As you notice, in this has been tradition in Mineral Point, on the last day of school, that is truly the last day of school, teachers are walking out of the building at that day. There's no additional work days or professional development days that happen, so they are truly trying to wrap up, and at 3:20, they are moving on for the summer.
So the committee did not pick one, or the committee did?
The committee, the goal of the committee was to present 2 different options for people to consider. But as they got into the committee could not even find that clear separation of 2. We considered, for instance, a double week at Christmas or on the holidays, at the winter holidays. But there just wasn't any support for that whatsoever. We considered smaller breaks, we considered moving spring break, we considered a January 9th end date, spreading the dates out, giving more breaks throughout the year. And there wasn't even consensus to put those 2 types of calendars out. So when we put out this final version of 176 and 180 for the community, or for the staff, that's when the 178 alternative came up, as for somebody that didn't want to be on either one of those extremes. And again, the survey results just don't really show that 180 gained any popularity whatsoever. So I think if I were to recommend to the board, you really should kind of focus in on 176 or 178. And I'm hearing wide support for 176 and moderate support for 178.
I move we go with 176.
I don't like it, 176, we're taking 4 days away. We've always operated on a 180. You hit the nail on the head, we're trying to do more, and here we're giving you 4 days less. Okay, insane. I don't understand it.
Well, the teachers aren't getting any less because they have 14 days.
The busing contract is for 180, I would assume, right?
That's correct. Food services based on
And
Food service
that
now?
be adjusted.
It's a 5-year contract. I don't know if that's available to be adjusted.
I mean, at the end of the season, of the school year, if we've done a great job and test scores are up, and you come to me and say, we want to release 2 days earlier, I'll consider that through board action.
I'll second Lisa's motion.
My only concern with it is the 3 days. It sounds like your committee, and people that I've talked to, the concern would be having to extend in June beyond the 2nd, and only having 3 days to play with. The 178 having 5 days to play with makes a lot more sense to me, just to make sure we don't extend beyond June 2nd.
There was discussion about if December, January were not favorable to put February 24th, which is now a work day, back in as an instructional date. That was something that was discussed. There really wasn't a lot of flexibility. There's Good Friday, potentially a half day to build in some instructional time, but that wasn't very well received. Shortening spring break really wasn't well received, and then we just run out of options because we're into Memorial Day. So there's not a lot of days to play with, but for instance, if we did know we had 3 days in December and early January, there's potentially some days that we can move some things around, but you're right that it could push beyond June 2nd with a very poor winter and inclement weather on days other.
Or you extend the school day by 5 more minutes.
That is an option, to try to build additional minutes into the day by going longer.
I mean, because just say we start at 8 and we're out at 3:25.
You know,
What's 5 more minutes? But
5 more minutes across, 5 days is 25 minutes a week. And it starts to add up to get to the point where it might be another day up by the end of the year. And at that point, I might suggest 8 more minutes just to put another minute into each period of the day, from 45 to 45.
I guess I withdraw my second. I think I agree with Mayor. I think I'd feel a little more comfortable with the 2-day buffer.
I can withdraw the motion.
What's wrong?
That would give us 5. I'll make a motion to go with the 178-day calendar.
I'll second that.
Going back to the contracts that we have with our vendors, the school busing contract in Tahoe.
Mm-hmm. Tahoe is a contract that we negotiate year to year,
Okay.
based on a given number of prescribed school days that we anticipate.
So we'll have to take a CAT. Okay.
That for sure we would have a kick at the cat at. Contractually, there is, in the transportation contract, it's not a hard rule. They base their numbers roughly on 180 days. In some years, it's 187, based on the number of snow days that go above and beyond. Or actually, we haven't chosen to extend the school year. We've always reduced. So sometimes when we have 180, we might only actually transport kids 175. That has been our potential, and we have not realized any base services, but there is a driver and a mileage fee that fluctuates based on the route, so that's maybe where the savings would be.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second to go with the 178-day. Any other discussion?
No, just a thought here, because you're taking, with this calendar, you're taking out October 28th. And just personally, what I've heard from staff, when we start the school year, September 1, that's a straight shot, and our day off is, first day off is November 23rd. There's no break there. And the 176-day calendar gave the 28th as a break, and then again February 24th, which from a principal standpoint, which is also state individual wrestling, we have quite a few kids that are gone that day. That's just what I've heard from the staff.
I would echo those comments from the elementary staff too, especially the October date was one that I've heard over and over, really asking for that break.
So why did we go back to giving the Wednesday before Thanksgiving off? Because you didn't do that this year.
That was currently a half day this year and was not received favorably. Staff were pretty adamant they would prefer a full day on that 23rd.
Would they prefer that over the October 28th day? If they had an option?
I think it is because when we took a day off, we took it off the 28th and we took it off of February 24th rather than taking a day here or a day on Good Friday. That was the trade-off, was October and February or the day before Thanksgiving and Good Friday. If you still wanted to conclude with a January 2nd or June 2nd end date.
Yeah, it looks to me like every Saturday and Sunday's a day off. Of course, I know some people can't do on Saturdays and Sundays.
So we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
And I want to vote yes. I'm thinking, I want to withdraw my motion. I think we, I mean, Lisa's right, it doesn't have to be done tonight. I think we need to
Well,
postpone this for a month and send it back to committee. And maybe have board members who join the committee.
Give some direction, please, to the committee work that needs to be done.
Well, I personally like the September 1 start, and I like the June 2nd, so it's like, okay, what do we have to do in the middle to get to those 2 days?
In 5 snow days.
Well, I would prefer 5 snow days, but
I'm pretty confident you have all of the middle options before you tonight. That's been pretty well vetted. There's only so many days that can move
Yeah.
without, and I guess if the board wanted us to bring back an option that pushes into a holiday break, or pushes into, you really you have the holiday break, you have spring break. You could touch Good Friday, or you could touch the day before Thanksgiving. The rest of them are work days built in at the end of the semester. There's just nothing else there.
well, technically the 23rd of December, you could almost take that day back.
There's actually some sentiment to put the 22nd in as well, rather than the 23rd, because Christmas falls on the Christmas Eve day is the 24th, and Christmas Eve is the 25th. There's a pretty strong sentiment that the 23rd is off. June 2nd, the 1st is actually New Year's, a holiday, so the day after is a holiday for support staff. There's many bowl games are going on the 2nd, so that's been well, parades and so forth. We vetted that as well.
Well, this got brought up once before and it wasn't well received, but, you know, for years and years and years, they had school, and if buses couldn't run, the people that could get there went to school, and people that couldn't came the next day when the buses ran. It's kind of amusing because there's a lot of days when you don't run the buses, and the parents are coming to town anyway.
I think there's something to be said for listening to the survey results, and also, with principals and just said, both of those, we in favor of the 176. So I'm inclined to go with 176 myself.
How many parents do we have? That's just parents, that's not the whole community.
That's parents and staff.
Parents and staff, and I did hear from a couple people that said they did not see a need to vote because they felt all the options were too similar to pick from. So that might be why you don't see a lot up there.
When you look at it from a parent perspective, really what they're looking at are these days up here. And it's really 2 days, it's either no school, full day, or a half day on the other. And so it's not a big difference for parents to really vote on, it's kind of a personal preference. For staff, I think it's a little bit different because of when the breaks come in and when the professional development happens.
We could just take a month and ask parents, our neighbors, whatever, what they think.
Could we maybe, have you done one of those things, a superintendent's corner, point out the differences in the calendar, or would that be too
Did share the differences, did this go out as well, Joel, the calendar differences, did that go out to parents?
Well, every parent receives an opportunity to vote on that.
Did they receive?
The ones that responded did.
Okay.
I received a handful of questions, 10.
I'd actually like to talk to some teachers too, and talk to these guys, like, would they rather have school extend beyond June 2nd as a possibility, and keep the 28th, or would they rather make sure we finish on the 2nd, you know, so
I'm not
Well, and there's
trying to,
probably an argument to like quality of education versus quantity. I mean, 4 days and the teachers are getting a break and feeling better about where they're at, I think that it probably is, the education is gonna be the same or better quality than 180 days that we would make them be there. So,
So there's, I would move to table it, but I think there's a motion pending.
There is a motion on the floor, so.
Motion has been withdrawn. 28th of October, WEPD, is that the state teachers convention, or I know that was always about that time of the year?
yeah.
You don't have it anymore? No junket.
So I move to table this.
You got a second on Lisa's motion?
I'll second it.
Second, Jeff. All in favor, say aye. Superintendent's report.
can I clarify, so table it, what do you want us to do in the, do you have direction on that? I mean, do you want another survey to parents being more detailed? Do you want,
Can you just remind parents who haven't taken that survey that they can still do it?
We're looking for input.
What was the count on the thing again there?
106? And I think, I would say, we did not break it down. Do you want it broken down by staff and not staff?
60%.
Is that something?
40% are going, 35% are going to be unhappy, or 57% are going to be unhappy.
My question is, if I send another survey to staff, do you want to see just the staff results versus the parent results? Or do you want them lumped together like this, or what would you like to see?
I think breaking it down is helpful. It's more information.
So the same question posed again with some clarification on what you guys discussed, and just send them the survey again?
Yeah, would it have that chart?
We can include that. We can also mention the snow day, which is not on there, differential.
Gets clarification about how we are gonna handle snow days. Would we, if we don't use snow days, would we start, end school earlier, or?
Because the snow day thing was on the side, I just don't know how many people read that, to be honest.
Not mentioning though that they could be
Right,
taken track.
possibly.
So the board should take a position if that's an option they want to consider.
Subtracting out snow days.
Yeah, ending prior to June 2nd as an option,
If not used.
if not used.
I don't support it.
I wouldn't have a problem with it.
They were built in but not used.
Anybody else?
Anyone of the three, as far as I'm concerned. Can't figure this out, how we're gonna figure out that $1.8 million worth of possible improvements for the school. Somebody's not gonna be really happy one way or another, you have to decide who's gonna be unhappy, who's gonna be happy.
Now's your time to give your opinion if you want to give one on taking away the snow days. Subtracting snow days.
Well, the weather's supposed to be mild up to the 21st of January, and that is subject to change.
This is for next year. This is 2016-17.
Oh, well,
You keep track of this, because probably the last time.
my ball's a little dirty on that side, I can't see much from there.
Can't we just say that the board, hasn't decided but could do, subtract for the snow days? Would we have to?
I think parents are trying to understand what their end date is or could be. The start date and end date and vacations are a pretty important piece for people
I
to
got
have.
the impression that the staff might be more apt to pick one or the other if they knew that they were gonna possibly, if they didn't use the snow days, they could get them.
Well, take the longer one, and if we don't have to use it for snow days, you get out early, everybody ought to be happy. I mean, this isn't that complicated thing, it's not gonna make everybody happy, you have to make a decision, sometimes to live with it, we don't know what the weather's gonna be, we have
So
no idea.
180 day, what's the start and finish dates on that one?
Same.
Same.
The question is, whether the board wants to even keep that as an option and or force the 180s to choose between the 76 or 78.
Mhm.
Did you want to look at the 180? I didn't pull it up.
No, I think it's a good idea going with just the 176 and 178.
I agree, I don't want to send the same survey twice. From a communication standpoint, I would rather say that the board looked at this and, I don't want to make people feel like they wasted their time by taking the first survey and then we send them the same one again, so.
I don't think people would necessarily like not knowing what the end of the school year is. I mean, I think it might be clear if we just say it's June. It's not gonna be earlier than June 2nd.
Could be later.
Could be later because of the snow day.
We even need another survey?
Yeah.
I think we have a pretty good understanding. I mean, the only reason I'd like to table it is I'd like to talk to a few teachers.
Call up Charles Franklin, get him to it.
Is that's,
Would like some time to see what they
the
want.
three of us sitting here, we're working way past June 2nd anyway, so.
Most of our surveys don't do
I think they should all work year round.
Well, we're pretty close.
They don't do
I
it.
know, but let's make it.
So it sounds like between the 176 and 178. We're gonna talk to a few of the employees. Feeling on, yeah.
So table, and we don't need the survey then?
I don't-
The staff did take it already, so.
We're fine,
Yeah.
we're fine.
You got enough information there.
Yeah. No survey.
Okay.
I'll resend it again.
Superintendent's
Superintendent's report. I want to start with the PLC vignette and share some information from Mike Mattos. In this video, Mike is in the process of describing the process that's needed to identify students for Tier 2 interventions. Tier 2 is an RTI, or terms that are used quite frequently in education jargon, and it's a response to intervention. Tier 1 is your general teaching, Tier 2 is that support for kids that didn't get it in the teacher's classroom the first time. I'm going to stop this at the 6-minute mark. I'm not going to go all the way through, but I did want to share this with you.
We've identified our essentials. We acknowledge right up front that when we teach these essentials the first time, in our normal unit of study, we don't run the same way, all kids don't run the same speed. So we need to be prepared to give kids extra help on those essentials. So our first level of intervention, using RTI language, we would call it Tier 2. We're going to be ready to give kids additional help to meet their grade level essential standards. Notice the shape tapers in. Why? That represents fewer kids, meaning we hope we taught it in Tier 1 in the first way that most kids got it. If most kids didn't, we go back and teach it again in our core instruction. But at some point, the teacher's got to move on to the next unit. At some point, most kids got it, we got to move on. But if there were essential standards in that last unit, some kids didn't get it, we call them essential because they are like, oh my Lord, they got to get them. So we better have a plan on how kids can get extra help on those and not miss the new essentials being taught back in class. The first step on Tier 2 interventions is we have to have a way to know which kids got it and which kids didn't, right? You need to have a way to know at the end of a unit who learned the essentials and who didn't, so we can identify every child who needs extra help. And the PLC process captures that in the second critical question. How do we know kids are learning? So we're going to monitor kids, because you can't wait for your state test scores, it'll be too late, right? And even district benchmark tests are often A, too far apart to respond in a timely way, and B, benchmark tests don't always match all the essentials the school has determined on what their child needs. So teacher-created assessments are going to be the key to identifying students for your first level intervention. Now, what do you need to know through your assessments to have effective interventions? You have to know two things. One, you have to know which kid learned and which kid didn't. And that makes sense. How will you ensure all kids learn at high levels if after you teach something you said was essential, you don't even know who got it and who didn't? But there's a key word there, specific. You have to get down to by student, by standard. By student, by standard. Here is our dilemma, right? At most schools, we're not identifying kids for help by student, by standard. We use big, broad indicators. Secondary school, the number one thing I see used to identify kids for extra help are report card grades. Because you're worried about kids that have D's or F's, and I get it. Because you don't get credit and you won't graduate, I get that. But here's your dilemma. I come to you and I say, I have 17 students with an F in algebra right now. A dang important course to a kid's future. So I come to you as a math department and say, these 17 kids need extra help in algebra. And let's say we carved out some intervention time during the school day to give kids extra help. So we know these kids need help, they have enough, we've sent them to the math team. You're that math teacher supposed to help them. Tell me what you're going to reteach them. Ready? Go. I hear crickets. Why? Do you think they're all failing for the same reason? Think they're all missing the same standard? Of course not. So how do you focus your reteaching? If your criteria for interventions is to put kids into interventions because they have an F, what is the goal of the intervention? To un-F them? Right? No. What if I told you that the Algebra 1 team, I identifying solving and graphing a linear equation is an essential standard? And what if they gave an assessment at the end of the unit on that topic and came to you and said 17 kids still struggle with solving and graphing a linear equation? Would you have a little better idea of what you're going to focus on during that intervention period? Absolutely. And I use a high school now. I do just as much with an elementary school. Elementary, we often use universal screeners to measure kids' progress. A quick down and dirty reading screener just to see where kids are at. We progress monitors throughout the year. You might use a test like DIBELS. So I come to you and I say, the following students were in the red zone in DIBELS, significantly below grade level. Okay, they're third grade. And you're a reading specialist. I say, okay, these 17 kids are in the red zone, third grade DIBELS. Tell me what you're going to teach them. Ready, go. Reading. Think they're all struggling for the same reason? I mean, is it letter recognition, phonemic awareness, high-frequency sight words with no opening pattern, fluency, comprehension? What's their wrong? Now, what if I told you that these 5 kids are struggling still with consonant, vowel, consonant blend? Would you know what to reteach? Some kids, high-frequency sight words is hurting their fluency. Would you know what to go after? And if teams have identified those essential skills, you'd be assessing those things along the way, wouldn't you? Then you would know exactly what kids are missing. But you got to know one more thing, because even if you get down to by student by standard, you have to know which instructional practices worked and which ones didn't. Would you agree with this statement? Giving kids more of what didn't work the first time you taught it is probably not the right intervention. Because if it would have worked the first time, it would have worked the first time, right? So, in the professional learning community process, we don't dictate how teachers teach core instruction. And why? We believe in best practice. There is no one best way to teach. Teaching is not just science, it's an art. Think about the best teachers you ever have. They all teach exactly the same way? They all have this, but this is effective. So when a team identifies an essential, that doesn't mean we all go back and teach in our rooms lockstep for core instruction. Teachers are going to have the ability to set their own lesson plans and their own unit plans and their own. Could they share ideas up front? Sure they could. But we're not going to require that. But if each teacher uses their own methodologies to be able to figure out the best way to teach the first time, how do you know by the end of the unit if core instruction worked? Well,
let me pause there. And the reason I chose this video is I think it really represents where our school is right now. We need to get down to our interventions by student, by standard. They also say by name and by need. We're right now reteaching kids that are on watch for reading, and we know who those 6th graders are, for example. We've got a bunch of them that we're trying to reteach reading. But without being down to specifically what's their reading issue, we're not really impacting the results. we have that time embedded in the day where we can bring kids in and work with them. We're very fortunate we've built that model. And we've got the PLC time on Wednesday to determine which kids have it and which kids don't, getting down to specifically, and what is their issue specifically that they didn't get in reading or math. And then we can start to reteach it. What's been our trouble spots in the past is we've been reteaching everything for everybody. Any kid that struggled in math, we would put them into I would call it a structured study hall, and we give them math supports. But not all those math supports were essential, and not all of those kids were getting the attention they needed because there's so many that are struggling in math. But if we can get it down to by skill and by student, I think we can really start to impact those kids that don't have the essential skills to go on from a course like algebra or beyond. So, and I want to continue to just kind of keep the board informed about things that we're working on as it's pertinent to our day-to-day work, and keep you updated with what the PLC process is and what it looks like. Can I answer any questions for any board members regarding Mike's video or some of the work that we're doing? Okay, I hope that's a good use of our time. If it's not, please share with me. And I'll continue to put PLC vignettes that try to speak to where we are in the process. I'll also be bringing in January our first quarterly report of what we've done in our PLC process, so you can see some of the outcomes that we've mapped. You can see some of the formative assessments that we've used to determine if kids need intervention or not, and start to develop some of those intervention plans and share that with the board. The next piece is the advocacy report. If you have your board packet, it's on page 127, and also populated up here on the big screen. Since the last time that we talked, there are a few things that have happened. Most specifically, the House Senate Conference Committee approved the ESEA rewrite. That was more formally known as the No Child Left Behind. And the president has recently signed that into law, so now we have No Child Left Behind being replaced by the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So you'll hear of ESSA coming up, or ESEA coming up, as the new acronym to replace No Child Left Behind. Today, earlier, I sent out a good side-by-side comparison of the differences between No Child Left Behind and the new ESEA Act. I think it does a good job of sharing where there was great compromise, both in the House and the Senate, as well as the final version of the bill that's passed. Gives more local control to states and local governments, agencies like ourselves as a school board, to make the determination of what's best for kids. So please look at some of those areas of comparison, and we can use that as a further discussion tool if you want. You also see that there is just some, I kind of cherry-picked, I think, some things that might speak to us. This is the bill that's exempting sales tax from school building materials purchased by construction contractors. There's strong bipartisan support to have materials for construction to be tax exempt. That can be significant, especially if we're looking at some larger projects like purchasing a $200,000 boiler, for example, has some real merits for some savings to the districts. The governor did sign a bill into law that allows school board members to be volunteer coaches. So if you have that interest, please let Ms. Dahl know. She'll be registering all your volunteerism. It just is a change. There wasn't much that happened as the legislature was kind of off, and I think they're starting to pick up with some hearings even this Thursday. There is a hearing around, escapes me right now, it's a big piece of legislation that's coming up.
Referenda restrictions.
Thank you. The ability for schools to host a referendum after it fails. Right now there's a bill, I think it was, his name escapes me, in the southeastern part of the state, that put together a bill that would suggest that if a referendum for schools fails, that there be a moratorium before the school could re-enter another referendum similar to that. So we'll be monitoring that as well.
How long?
My understanding was it was a 2-year wait period, but that's part of what will be negotiated in the bill. I think the intent, from my interpretation, was these large school districts doing $100 million referendum bonds for a new building, and they said no. So they just repackaged it as a $98 million referendum bond, and people still say no. And so they should have to wait to come back to the public. However, I take really concern with that from a rural school perspective, is a lot of times you learn from a plan what the community says no to often gives you an indication of what they would say yes to. So for us, it could be operations, and they may say no to $600,000 worth of operations, but would have said yes to $400,000. And we may not be able to revisit that for 2 years, so that could be problematic for us as we get into some shortfalls and revenue issues coming forward. After the advocacy bill, superintendent's report, Tahoe food service reports. This morning I met with Jeannie, our lead chef, and Lisa Carrero from Tahoe. I'll give you, make sure I got the right copy. I think I got enough to sit around there. And I believe I can load this up on the big screen as well. I thought I had it preloaded, so I apologize unless it's here. No, I don't have it preloaded, I'm sorry. As you go through the Tahoe report, this is just fresh in, and as you look down, the revenues are on the top line, more specifically total revenues. The budget for revenues in 15-16, $115,448. The year-to-date actual revenues are $116,871. So revenues are up $1,400 year-to-date from what was budgeted. On the expense side, there was expected to be a loss of $138,337. Currently, there's a loss of $136,832. So again, that is ahead of projection by $1,500 year-to-date through, this would be the end of November. So combining the revenue and the expenditures that were not lost or not recognized to date, the year-to-date profit is $2,928. Now that should be in context with understanding that the budget year-to-date was expected to have a loss at the end of the year of $22,889. And at the current place where we are today, we have a loss of $19,960. So we're ahead of projection. We knew that their model had a loss, and all losses would be incurred by Tahoe, but they are ahead of projections of what they anticipated their losses to be. Just for information, last year, the actual loss was $40,000. So they've cut that loss in half, and they are certainly ahead of projection for now.
How is it last year was 40,000 when we were told 26,000?
I'm sorry, last year's year-to-date fiscal end was a $40,000 loss. That's what they ended up with at year's end.
So the difference in the 26,000 and the 40 was what they paid the school back?
Correct, yeah.
And I stopped in both kitchens and looked around. We were told there was $60,000 inventory as of the end of last school year, and the 2 storerooms are virtually empty. It's like, I'd like to know where that $60,000 was sitting.
I can't speak to that. I know from my conversation with Lisa tomorrow, or this morning, that they're still working on trying to spend down or use up. They had to front load a ton of chicken last year because they had used direct diversion. And that direct diversion had, like you said, boxes and boxes of chicken that they've been trying to use up so that they can cycle in other menus besides chicken. I can't speak to where those boxes are or where their inventory is, but I could certainly inquire.
How old is that chicken?
It's frozen, good forever. I have no idea. On the meal side,
What's that, 6 months or less?
you know, certainly to be, in all honesty, the direct diversion came in, I believe, at fiscal year end, frozen over the summer and then reutilized this school year.
I think it's, Jeff said 6 months, I think that's right. Pork 6 months, beef's about a year. It's not gonna kill anybody. It's just not, might want to be what you want to invite your good friends to eat.
Likewise, you know, from a Tahoe perspective, it was pre-purchased chicken that wasn't under their direction. That was, the direct diversion was actually locked in a year prior, and so we were forced to use what the government gave us in brown box, and they received it. They didn't have any control over the amount of chicken that was received, so I know they're working to get that cycle more regular. On the meal side of things, you'll see that for breakfast they budgeted 50 meals. They're actually serving closer to 61 meals on average through the end of November. Lunch was 416. Those are down at 390. There is total meals though, 620 and 606. That's budgeted to actual, so they are 14 meals behind what they budgeted for purposes of revenue. But looking at the column to the far right, last year versus this year is that last column, we are, even at 606, we're 33 lunches ahead of where we were last year. Last year we were serving year-to-date 573. And so we're up.
The adult line under lunch,
Yes,
when we look at last year versus this year,
yes.
shouldn't we be -6 there at 2015-16 is at 9, last year 2014-15 was at 15, and we're showing 0?
I would agree that 15 less the 9 would be a more accurate reflection, I agree. Thank you. So that might change the bottom line. I don't know if we were to add those up, but that changes the figure. My assumption is these are totaled together. So if you put in that minus, it might bring your 33 down by 6 to 27 would be the number there that we were ahead of last year, but still under budget for total meals served.
Where the total revenues come from up here in the top? Luke, on that?
Total revenues, this comes from Tower's internal ledger. It does get tied back to our Fund 50 food service expenditures and revenues as well. Any other questions?
Who takes in the money now? When that goes in, whatever you put it in, that's their money, or do they give to you?
So the funds do still come through the school district, either through check or a service called e-funds, or electronic way to deposit money into the accounts of
So
students.
the daily receipts would go to the office?
Correct.
This is included in the Johnson Block audit.
The food service is part of the Johnson Block audit, yes, correct. Fund 50 is also part of that. Yeah, that'd be 14, 15.
Can I make a motion, Larry, based on the time of the night, what we got left, and we postpone our work study until next meeting?
Okay, we got a second motion by Matt to postpone book study. Second by Jeff. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
I read it when they gave it to me, and I wasn't impressed.
Motion carried. All right. Closed session. We will be moving into closed session. I guess we have a motion.
One thing left.
Stevenson
Yes.
and Sells.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Need a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Lisa, second by Matt. By Eric.